class on Saturday, we were talking about cybersecurity. We were discussing few basic concepts in cybersecurity, and we understood why cybersecurity is so challenging. What are the different challenges faced in ensuring foolproof cybersecurity? We even spoke about different types of cyber attacks. We were understanding what are malwares. So let's continue the discussion from here. We have to talk about the different types of malicious softwares or malwares which are used by cyber attackers to hack into your system and to gain control over your system. If you remember, we had mentioned few malwares such as computer worms, computer viruses, and even Trojans, ransomwares. So we need to study and understand what these malwares are. How do they function? Right? Because there can be a prelims question here. Even a 10-mark mains question can be asked where you have to explain how these malwares function and what threat do they pose. So let's look at viruses, worms, and Trojans, and then I'll explain what are ransomwares. See, a computer virus, in many ways, it is similar to your biological virus, meaning in the way it behaves, in the way it acts, the way it infects a human body, right? In those methods, there is some similarity between a biological virus and a computer virus. That's the reason why it's called a virus in the first place. A computer virus is dependent on the host. It is dependent on the host. It is dependent on the user, just like your biological virus, right? Your biological virus cannot survive without a host. It needs a host to survive. It needs a host to propagate. It needs the user, as in case of biological virus, it needs the infected person, right, to commit certain actions to transmit it to others. Or else virus on its own will not spread, or it will not easily infect others. So in that regard, a biological virus which is dependent on the host and requires the host's intervention, right? Those features are similar here with your computer virus. Your computer virus is not very independent. It is always attached to a host file. It's not a standalone program. It's not an independent software. It is usually attached to another host file, maybe a .exe file, or executable file, or to a Word document, right, or any downloadable documents. It comes attached with another host file. This is one important feature you notice about a computer virus. It is attached to a host file. To infect your computer, to transmit, to move around, right? A virus has to be attached to a host file, similar to how biological viruses depend on the host. All right, that is the crude similarities that exist between these two viruses. And these computer viruses, they don't activate, they don't act on their own. It requires the user interaction. It requires user action for it to get activated. Or else it will remain dormant in the system without infecting the system. Just like how biological viruses can remain dormant, right? They get activated only when your immunity goes down. Quite similarly, here as well, a computer virus depends on user intervention. The user has to commit certain action to activate the virus, which would be to open this host file, to download the host file, to run that executable program. Only when that action is committed by the user, that is when the virus code will start running. That is when the virus gets activated and infects your system. Is that clear? So two important features about a computer virus is that it is dependent on a host file. It can't be an independent code. It's not a standalone program. And it requires the user's direct action or intervention for it to be activated. For example, you might receive a phishing email, right? Where you're being tricked, you're being deceived by the cyber criminals. If you fall prey to their propaganda, their social engineering methods, and you download that file, let's say the mail has a attachment. The phishing email is asking you to download this attachment. You get deceived by the mail and you download the attachment, and the attachment, the host file, downloads onto your system along with the virus which is attached to it. But even after downloading the file, your system will still not be infected, right? The host file is sitting in your system with the virus attached to it, but still your system is not infected. But the moment you open that file, the moment you run that program, right, that is when the virus gets activated. So direct user action is needed. And even for transmission, user action is needed. Going to transmit on its own entirely. It can replicate, it can make copies of itself once it is activated, but however, it can't propagate, it can't transmit or spread on its own. Is that clear? Once the virus is activated, it can replicate and make multiple copies, but it will not infect other systems or the whole network. It will not propagate through the network unless and until there is, again, user action. Understood? Just like a biological virus doesn't spread just like that, right? You need to perform certain actions. Like HIV, for example, right? It spreads through certain actions. COVID-19 or other respiratory diseases, they spread through certain actions. Similarly, a computer virus requires a user action even to transmit to other systems, to infect the whole network. Now, let's say one system is already infected. Let's say the host file has been downloaded onto the system, right? And then the user has opened that file or run that executable program, which would have activated the virus and infected that system. So once it starts running, that's when it gives access to the hacker. The hacker will successfully gain control over the system, and he can steal data, he can monitor, observe the actions, right? Or even gain full control over the operation of the system. Now, this infected system will not infect other systems in the network. It will not spread through the network. It again requires a user action here. Let's say, for example, the user plugs a pen drive. All right, plugs a pen drive to the infected system. That is when the virus copies which have been made will copy onto the pen drive as well. You take that pen drive, you plug it into another clean system which is not infected. All right, then the virus copies onto the other system as well and infects the other system. So that is how it spreads. Like few biological viruses, they spread only with touch, with contact, right? Or through certain specific routes of transmission. Similarly, computer virus also requires user action, right? Only when there is such user action, the virus copies will get replicated and it will start affecting the other systems in the network. So as a result, the spread of a virus can be a little limited. The speed with which a computer virus can spread through multiple networks and affect multiple systems is a little limited, because every time there is a need for user activation and user action to transmit this. But doesn't mean viruses are not deadly. These are not limitations actually. That is how viruses are programmed. Viruses, if they are designed for a specific purpose, right, they can be extremely dangerous and they can perform any function, like giving complete access, remote access to the attacker, where the attacker can control all your operations, where the attacker can steal sensitive data which is stored on the system, or even observe all the actions, monitor the keystrokes, activate the microphone or cameras, listen, watch what you're doing, right? Any such attacks can be mounted once the virus is active and once it has given access to the attacker. So don't assume that virus is not too dangerous. It's not a limitation actually. It's not a disadvantage. This is how a virus functions. That is how computer viruses are programmed. They can be equally deadly depending on what purpose it is being deployed for. The other malware is a computer worm. A computer worm is like your biological worms, meaning they are more independent. It's the opposite, almost the opposite of a computer virus. A computer worm is an independent program. It's a standalone code, and it does not need any host to survive. Just like your biological worms are independent on their own, right? They survive on their own, they move on their own. In a similar way, I'm not saying they're exactly the same. In a similar way, computer worms, they can act independently. All right. It's not attached to any host file like a virus. It's not dependent on any host file. It can be a standalone code, an independent program, which can be inserted into your system. The hacker will have many methods through which the worm can be inserted into your system. By breaching your firewall and your cybersecurity defenses, the hacker can directly plant the worm into the system remotely. Or someone can physically access the system and transfer the worm, and it does not need any host, and no user action is necessary. No user action is needed. It gets activated automatically on its own. Is that clear? So it's more independent compared to a computer virus. It does not need any host file. The attacker can directly plant this on your device, and there is no need for any interaction or intervention from the victim. The user need not run or open any programs. The moment it is on your system, it will activate automatically, and it will start replicating. Copies will be made, and it will start propagating on its own. Is that clear? Without the need for any user action or intervention, computer worms will make copies of itself, and it will start spreading through the network, because any device will be connected to the network, either through a Wi-Fi network or through a Bluetooth network, right? Through a LAN cable, through a regular mobile data connection. Any such network will witness the automatic spread of a computer worm. Once a system is infected, the worms will make copies, and the copies will start spreading automatically, infecting several computers at the same time. Thousands, lakhs, millions of systems can be infected. So as a result, the spread of the worm is very, very fast. The rate at which it can spread and affect multiple systems is many, many times higher than how the virus can spread. All right. So these are the fundamental differences between a virus and a worm. But both are malicious codes. Both are equally dangerous. They can perform any task that the programmer has designed it for. The attacker who would have designed this malicious code, they can use these malwares to perform any tasks. As I told you, they can specifically steal certain data. Your username, login IDs, passwords, banking details, your personal details, which is stored on the system. Or they can just observe, monitor. Basically, they can spy. They can look at your activities, look at your browsing history, what you're ordering online, right? The keystrokes you're typing on the keyboard, the websites you're visiting, your location. So all these basic data points can be captured, and the data can get transferred remotely to the attacker. Or they can gain full control over your system and start manipulating the functions of the system as well. So both viruses and worms can perform such functions, but the way they operate, the way they spread is different. Is that clear? That is the basic difference. Viruses are more dependent. They need a host and user activation and user intervention for spread, whereas worms are independent. They don't need any host, no user activation is needed, and they will spread automatically. They'll propagate throughout the network on their own. Understood? So these are the basic differences between a virus and a worm. Now, coming to the next malware, a Trojan. What is a Trojan? The name Trojan is actually drawn from Greek mythology. If you understand this story from Greek mythology related to the Trojan horse, it becomes very easy to understand what is this malware or how does it function. In Greek mythology, there is this popular story about the city of Troy, how the Greeks had attacked the city of Troy, and the people of Troy had defended the city with a very strong fort. They had a well-built fort around the city. So Greek soldiers could not penetrate the fort at any cost. So what they did was, the Greeks, according to this legend, according to this myth, the Greek soldiers, they appeared to retreat. After failing to occupy the city of Troy, after failing to breach the fort, they appeared to retreat. They got onto their ships, they went back, they sailed back. Now, looking at the Greek soldiers going away, the people of Troy, they felt that the Greeks had accepted defeat. So they started celebrating. They came out, they opened the doors of the fort, they celebrated, and they saw that there is this large wooden horse which the Greeks had left behind. While running away, while accepting defeat and running away, they had left behind a very big, large wooden horse, which is called the Trojan horse. So the people of Troy who were celebrating the victory, they dragged the wooden horse inside the fort. They took it as a war memorabilia, as a war memento. They took the wooden horse inside the city. They celebrated throughout the night and everyone retired to bed in the night. But later in the night, inside this large wooden horse, the Trojan horse, Greek commandos were hiding. Several Greek commandos were hidden inside this wooden horse. So they would come out of the wooden horse and attack the city and open the doors of the fort, by which time the Greek troops had come back. They'd come back in the night because they were waiting for the commandos hiding in the wooden horse to open the gates, and then they launched a major attack, devastating the city of Troy. This is the Greek myth. All right. Of course, it's not relevant for the exam. But if you understood what is this Trojan horse, you'll get to know what's the malware. Now, in case of Trojan horse, according to the Greek myth, what happened? People thought it's just a benign object, right? They saw that it was no threat for them. That's how it appeared. The Trojan horse, the large wooden horse, it appeared to be benign, just an inanimate object posing no threat to the people. That is how they got deceived. That is how they got tricked to think that this is something which is inanimate, it's genuine, it's not a threat to us. Now, the moment they took it inside, right, that is when the attackers came from the inside of the Trojan. Attackers were hiding inside the Trojan horse. They came out and attacked the city and opened the doors to allow the other Greek troops to decimate the city. Your Trojan malware is very similar. This piece of malware, this code or this file, it looks very benign. Doesn't look like a threat. It doesn't raise any suspicion. You can easily get deceived. It might be a MP4 file or a PDF or a PPT or a .exe file, right? Or a APK file, which is related to some application. You might think it's a genuine file, posing no threat to you. So you might get deceived and you might actually install this file or download it and you might open it eventually, right? The moment you bring it onto your system, the actual malicious code will be hidden inside the Trojan. The Trojan is just an outer layer. All right. On the outside, it looks just benign, inanimate, posing no threat to you. But the moment you bring this Trojan onto your system, right, automatically, this happens automatically. The malware gets released. Without your knowledge, the malware gets released. The malware could be anything. It could be a worm, virus, a ransomware, a spyware. So such malwares will be hidden inside the Trojan. All right. So the Trojan is the outer layer. It's the outer code, the outer file, which gives it a very normal, genuine impression, right? But the moment it's on your system, automatically it will release the malware, thereby bringing your system under attack, right? And now the attacker can perform any action. The malware will take over and perform the actions it is designed for. So this is called a Trojan. All right. Trojans can be transferred by user action again. It can infect other files, and user intervention could be needed for its spread. User action might be needed. Just like a regular virus, some user action will be needed, right, where it propagates through the network and through other systems. So this is how Trojans operate. The Trojan itself is not the malware. The Trojan is hiding the actual malware inside. Is that clear? So these are the three basic types of malwares that you should be familiar with. These are very commonly used by cyber attackers to gain access into your system, to hack into your devices. Now, let us see what is a ransomware. This is a very, very important topic. What is a ransomware? As the name itself tells you, it's a malware designed to extract ransom from the victims, to hold the victims hostage, blackmail them, right? Gain leverage over the victims and force them to pay a ransom. So how does it work? These ransomwares are designed to encrypt and lock your device. The device which is infected with a ransomware gets locked up with extremely high level of encryption. All the data gets encrypted. You'll be locked out of your system. You cannot access your device at any cost. And once the system is encrypted and locked, you will just see a message on the screen. What will be the message? The message will show that you've been attacked, your data is locked, you're basically locked out of your own system. Now, if you need access back, if you want to gain your access back to your system, to the sensitive data which is stored in your system, then you need to pay the money, the ransom that they are asking for, which they usually ask in cryptocurrencies. As crypto digital currencies like bitcoins and others, they give complete anonymity to the transaction, right? You can't identify the individual behind these accounts, these digital wallets. That's the very nature of cryptocurrencies or digital currencies. So they demand payment, they demand the ransom in crypto digital currencies, usually bitcoins. And once you transfer the amount to the given address, only then you will be given the key for de-encryption. Is that clear? To de-encrypt your system and the data and gain access back, the key would be necessary, and the key will be provided only if you pay the ransom to the attacker. So this results in severe financial loss. And also there is no guarantee that the attacker will give you the key even after you make the payment. As this is entirely remote, you'll never come face to face with the attacker. Even if you pay the ransom, there are chances where they keep extracting more money. They might deny giving you the key and they might ask even more money. So there's no guarantee that your system will be unlocked after you pay the ransom, but you have no other choice. So today, ransomwares have become the biggest threat. In the last decade, ransomware incidents are the most common. People, businesses, government entities are losing billions of dollars every single year. That is how big the threat has become. See, for individuals, this may not mean much. For example, let's say our personal computer or our phone comes under a ransomware attack. Instead of paying that ransom, you might as well throw your device and go get a new device. For us, it doesn't really matter. We may not have much sensitive data and information there, right? But government entities and private organizations, they cannot afford to lose access or lose data. Understood? Imagine a key government department coming under ransomware attack and critical data getting locked out. It is going to disrupt governance. It's going to disrupt public services. So these government agencies will be forced to pay the ransom. There's no other way for them. If you try to break the encryption on your own, it could destroy all the data. That's how the malware will be programmed. Even if you make an attempt to break the code, it's going to erase all the data. Your system will be erased. You'll lose your data forever. So your only option is to just pay the ransom the attacker is asking for and hope that they will behave rationally. Hope that they'll give the key to de-encrypt your system. Similarly, private companies. Imagine a bank, or imagine a software company or a biotech company. They will have precious data of their users, which is stored on their systems. At any cost, they cannot lose that. A pharma company might have invested millions of dollars in research on a drug or a vaccine. And if their systems are locked out, right, they can't simply throw the systems and get a new one. They will lose years of effort and millions of dollars in investment. So they will be forced to pay the ransom, right? And they want to, at any cost, they want to get access back to the sensitive systems and data. So private organizations and government companies are the biggest risk for ransomware attacks. Understood? So there are many such incidents we have seen. I can give you many examples as well. For example, have you heard of WannaCry? WannaCry was a popular ransomware which caused havoc around the world a few years ago. Around 2017, 2018, around 4 to 5 years back, that's when WannaCry ransomware was spreading around the world, infecting multiple systems where many government organizations, private companies, they were forced to pay millions of dollars in ransom. Recently, we had another deadly ransomware called Akira. Just 2 months ago. This was in August 2023. Just 2 months back, Akira ransomware affected several systems around the world where many organizations lost a lot of money. All right, it would affect Windows or even Linux-based operating systems, lock out the systems, and you have to pay the ransom to get access back to the system. Then we have seen other ransomwares like Petya, NotPetya. These ransomwares were allegedly Russian cyber operations. It was essentially Russian cyber war against Ukrainian government services. Before the war began last year, because see, Russia-Ukraine conflict is going on from 2014. It didn't start just last year. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 itself. It started sponsoring a separatist war in eastern Ukraine from 2014. So almost from 9 years, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has been going on. So over the past decade, Russian cyber organizations affiliated to Russian intelligence, they mounted several major ransomware attacks called Petya and NotPetya, targeting Ukrainian public services. They would target Ukrainian banks, ATMs. They would target electricity services, water services, transportation. Such critical services, critical infrastructure of Ukraine was targeted, which would disrupt the delivery of services to the people. So these government private organizations which are providing these services, they have no other option but to pay the ransom, right? So this crippled Ukrainian critical infrastructure, and Ukraine lost a lot of money as well, incurring severe financial losses, along with disruption of services to the public. So these are some major ransomware incidents that we have seen. There are many, many more. For example, the NHS healthcare system of Britain was brought under a ransomware attack a few months ago. It's the backbone of Britain's healthcare system, right? So hospital data, patients' data, hospital networks were locked out, and it would disrupt and completely destroy the healthcare system itself, where patients' lives could be at risk. So the British government, the NHS authorities were forced to pay the ransom to get access back, right? So that's one more incident. The ransomware attack on NHS in the UK. Forget UK, our own AIMS medical institution in Delhi came under a major ransomware attack a few months ago. You might have read about this in newspapers, right? The key systems of AIMS were completely locked out and the systems went offline. So the hospital couldn't even process basic medical services. Key data was locked out. So patient services was completely affected. The whole operation of AIMS in Delhi was completely disrupted, right? So these are some popular incidents. There are many American companies as well, which have lost millions of dollars to these attacks. There was a fast food chain in the US whose systems were locked out. It's a billion-dollar company. So they had to pay a few $1 million in ransom to get access back. Then there was a oil pipeline company in the US, right? Its critical systems which control the pipeline operations were hacked and brought under a ransomware attack. So this oil company also paid the ransom to get control back. So many such incidents are happening, and trust me, this is the biggest threat right now because it's easy to make money, that too not small amounts of money. You can make guaranteed millions of dollars through these attacks. Since the target is primarily large private companies, government entities, they will have the money to pay as well. Sometimes individual may not have that kind of money, right? Your regular cyber crimes are nothing in front of ransomware attacks. The regular cyber frauds and the cyber crimes which happen, right, where people lose few thousand rupees, few lakh rupees, right? That is nothing for the criminals. That's a very small amount they would make. But ransomware can fetch them almost several $1,000s to $1 million because the entities they are targeting will have the money to pay and they have the leverage on them, right? So that is why ransomware incidents have become the biggest cyber threat in the last decade. So kindly pay attention to these topics. These are all very dynamic topics. You don't have to read books or go in depth. Just this basic understanding is enough, and read newspapers. In newspapers, you will get enough material, right? You'll get enough updates on all these incidents. Trust me, read newspapers for 1 year. You will come across many ransomware incidents, many cases of viruses, worms, and Trojans. Just make a small note of it. Just note down some recent incidents, like I'm giving some examples. That is more than sufficient. And understand the concept. How does it work? All right. So these cyber weapons, they're nothing short of cyber weapons, right? These malwares are essentially cyber weapons. They can be used for different purposes. They can be used for cyber espionage, basically to spy, to collect classified information. All right. So who can carry out cyber espionage? Can you tell me in the comments? Which entities, what kind of entities or organizations might engage in cyber espionage? Governments, very good. Okay. Governments, enemy countries, terrorists as well. Non-state actors supported by government. Pratyaksh says that. Very good. See, cyber espionage need not just be done by governments and intelligence agencies. Of course, they are the primary sources, right? Hostile governments, through their intelligence agencies, might mount cyber espionage campaigns to spy on other governments, to collect secret classified information. Apart from them, even private companies might engage in corporate espionage to steal trade secrets from competitors, or to steal sensitive policy information from the government, which might help the companies. Even private companies might sponsor cyber criminal groups to mount cyber espionage campaigns. Is that clear? So either governments and their intelligence agencies, right, where one government targets the other, where the government is targeting the citizens. That's where cyber espionage is seen. And even in case of corporate espionage, private companies using espionage methods to spy on competitors and the government. So we have seen few major incidents. I can give you a couple of examples. Operation Shady Rat and Operation Ghostnet. Both were Chinese operations. Apparently, they were linked. All investigations, they linked these attacks to Chinese cyber groups, which are non-state actors actually. These cyber groups were non-state groups. They were tied with Chinese intelligence later. So the studies showed that these operations, which went on from 2008 all the way till 2012, they were designed to target foreign governments. India was one of the biggest victims, along with Western countries, US and European countries, along with India. Several key government institutions, several ministries, Indian embassies and consulates abroad, they were the target of the attack, along with spying on Tibetan activities, the activities of Dalai Lama, activities of Tibetan Buddhists and their government in exile, which is in Dharamshala, right? And how India and US work with Tibetan activists. What contacts do they have? Such specific information was targeted under these operations. Along with that, we saw that the Olympics committee was also targeted at the same time when China was hosting the 2008 Olympics, right? The International Olympics Committee was also a victim of this attack. And many universities and research and development institutions, including private companies, have been targeted under Shady Rat and Ghostnet. Because China is known to steal sensitive information, not just from governments and key ministries like Defense Ministry, Foreign Ministry, and intelligence agencies. It also targets colleges, universities, private companies, research institutions to steal scientific data. China primarily targets Western universities and research institutions to steal research data, to steal intellectual property, through which China can copy and replicate those technologies and products. So these were massive espionage operations linked with Chinese intelligence operations. See, in case of cyber attacks, you can never clearly pinpoint where the attack is coming from, who sponsored it. But studies can help you. Forensics, cyber forensics, and further investigation can pinpoint the source. You can conclude, you can assume that, okay, the attack came from here, depending on the nature of the attack, right? So these attacks have been linked with Chinese non-state cyber groups. China, Russia, many countries, they run these large cyber groups or cyber organizations which are not connected to the government directly, but they are sponsored by intelligence agencies. They work with intelligence agencies. Just like Pakistan sponsors terror groups, many governments, through their intelligence agencies, they sponsor few cyber organizations which are non-state entities. So even if someone traces the attack back to them, right, the government can always disown. They can say we have no connection with the non-state group. So these operations were linked with Chinese intelligence operations targeting India and Western countries. These tools can be used for cyber warfare, outright conflict, where two states can target each other with war. Is that clear? War is between two governments, two states. So cyber weapons can be used. There are offensive and defensive cyber weapons. All right. Through offensive cyber weapons, you can bring down the enemy's critical infrastructure without even firing a single bullet, without even going to an actual war, a physical war. You can cripple a country, bring down a country to its knees through offensive cyber operations. You can target power grids. You can destroy power plants. You can cause accidents and disasters to happen in hazardous industries, right? For example, nuclear plants can be damaged through a cyber attack. You can cause air crash to happen, train accidents to happen. You can bring down the banking financial system completely, collapsing the economy of the country, right? You can cause a dam to break or burst open. You can attack the mobile internet infrastructure, which can lead to a mobile internet blackout. You can target key government facilities. Your military networks can be crippled. Your weapons can be deactivated. Or they can be misled. Right? So any such possibility is possible. Today, cyber warfare is so advanced, right? It has a real world impact. And we have seen many such incidents happening. As I told you, Petya and NotPetya is a classic example of cyber warfare using ransomwares, where Russian intelligence agencies, the GRU and SVR, they allegedly sponsored these non-state cyber groups to launch Petya, NotPetya ransomwares targeting Ukraine's critical infrastructure. Their goal was to disrupt Ukrainian services and impose a financial cost and also to impose a critical impact on the government services in the country. Another major cyber warfare we have noticed is Stuxnet. Stuxnet was a computer worm allegedly developed by Israeli and American intelligence agencies. They used it to target Iran's nuclear centrifuges, and they caused the destruction of nuclear centrifuges in order to slow down Iran's nuclear weapons program. Because see, US and Israel have constantly targeted Iranian nuclear program from many years. Their intelligence agencies, the CIA and the Mossad, they have assassinated several Iranian scientists to slow down the nuclear program. Right? Along with that, they waged a cyber war as well. They developed one of the most sophisticated computer worms, one of the most sophisticated malwares called Stuxnet, which was implanted onto Iranian computers that were connected with nuclear centrifuge plants. So these attackers, they got control over the centrifuge. They got complete control over the systems that control the centrifuge, and they caused it to spin out of control. By manipulating the operation of the centrifuge, they led to the physical destruction of the centrifuges. That is the power of cyber weapons. You can cause physical damage. That's why I told you, air crash can be caused. Train accidents can be caused. Your banking financial system can be completely brought down. Your power grids can be brought down. So any such attacks are possible. It all requires sophistication, planning, and the resources. Right? And today governments have invested heavily in cyber warfare. Just like you have an army, navy, air force. Right? Similarly, defense forces have been raised. Many countries have dedicated armed forces for cyber warfare. These are not just a team of hackers and engineers or civilians. These are soldiers. These are trained soldiers capable of delivering significant damage to the enemy country. Similarly, terror groups have also tried their hand at cyber attacks. So when terrorists engage in cyber attacks, we call it cyber terrorism. So groups like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, even Hamas, Hezbollah, they've all gained some abilities. They have shown some abilities to wage cyber campaigns. Although we haven't seen any major terror attack through a cyber attack, they have made attempts. For example, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they had targeted a dam in the US. They had even targeted an oil pipeline in the US. But these were all failed attacks. The American agencies, they defended their critical infrastructure and they repelled the attack. Hamas and Hezbollah have targeted Israeli infrastructure. They've tried, made attempts, but again, they have not succeeded. So even though we haven't seen any major case of cyber terrorism, attempts have definitely been made. We have seen attempts being made, and we have seen terror groups trying to acquire the capabilities. Is that clear? Then finally, cyber weapons are used for your regular cyber crimes. for committing regular cyber crimes such as ransomware attacks, to steal, maybe to steal data, to extract ransom by using ransomware attacks, or to spy on the victim, that is, observe the victim and later to blackmail the victim, or directly to commit financial fraud, to steal money from the victim. So, all these are your regular cyber crimes which keep happening. This has become another menace. It's a threat to law and order. Your regular cyber crimes, the cyber frauds that you read about, where people are deceived and duped, where people are losing money, right? Where their credit cards are, the credit card details are stolen, net banking details are stolen, right? Or where they're being blackmailed by the attackers by holding information against them. So all these are your regular cyber crimes, which becomes a law and order situation. But the others are a national security threat. Cyber espionage, warfare, and terrorism, they are national security concerns. Regular cyber crimes, the frauds which happen, right, targeting the normal citizens, they are mainly law and order problems. It's a law and order situation. So these are the different types of cyber threats that exist. Understood? Now, we will move to the final part of the discussion here. We will understand what is critical infrastructure, which I've been mentioning from a while. We'll specifically talk about critical information infrastructure. Then, based on that, we will understand India's preparedness. Where does India stand with regard to cyber threats? What have we done to improve our cyber security? What institutions do we have? What laws and policies do we have? So that is something we will study, and that will basically complete this chapter. All right. So let's see what is critical information infrastructure, or CII. This term is defined under the IT Act of 2000. Remember, in the last chapter we studied IT rules that regulates social media, OTT, and digital media platforms. Those IT rules, I told you, it's notified under the IT Act, the Information Technology Act. Currently, this is the primary law we have which governs information technology, all digital technologies. So under the IT Act, critical information infrastructure has been defined. All right. So according to this law, the computer resources and networks which are connected to the country's critical infrastructure, they become your critical information infrastructure. All right. Now, what is your critical infrastructure? Any infrastructure which is the backbone of the country's economy and national security. For example, the infrastructure of the military infrastructure, key military bases, military facilities, military communication, right? Important government offices, Prime Minister's office, the Defense Ministry, right? Foreign Ministry, Finance Ministry, offices of government entities like ISRO, DRDO, right? They all constitute the critical infrastructure of the country. Then your banking infrastructure, your whole financial system, including the stock markets, right? Your mobile internet infrastructure, power grids, power plants, thermal power plant, nuclear power plants especially, right? And even solar and other power plants, which is critical for energy security. Your seaports, airports, your railway infrastructure, dams, important mines, etc. Basically, you get the idea. The list can go on, but you get the idea. Such key sectors, which are seen as the backbone of the country's economy, national security, and public health and safety, right? That becomes your critical infrastructure in the physical world. Even your healthcare infrastructure, your hospital networks, right? This physical infrastructure, which you see physically, like the power grids that you see, the power stations, power plants, the seaports and airports that you see physically, which is there, that is your physical infrastructure, right? The military bases, the railway network, dams, your mobile towers, the back end of the mobile internet ecosystem, the physical infrastructure and facilities that you see everywhere, that is your country's critical infrastructure. It's critical because any attack against them, it can have a domino effect, and it can have a devastating impact. Is that clear? If your critical infrastructure is attacked, even through a physical attack, let's say terrorists will attack airports, or let's say military facilities are targeted by terrorists or by a hostile government, right? Any such strikes on our critical infrastructure physically will have a devastating impact on the country. It will affect the country's economy and national security and public health. And it usually has a domino effect, a chain reaction. Like, for example, if power grids are brought down, imagine if the whole country is facing a blackout, then your banking and financial system goes down, your mobile internet systems go down, right? Key functions in various sectors will go down due to lack of electricity. It will have a cascading effect. It will have a chain reaction or a domino effect. So that kind of attack on your key facilities, right? That is an attack on critical infrastructure. And the computers and networks behind it, which is controlling them, basically your IT infrastructure, which is part of it, that becomes your critical information infrastructure. Understood? All the computers, the networks which are connected to these critical facilities, which are controlling them, running their operations, that IT infrastructure becomes your critical information infrastructure. So any cyber attack, any virtual cyber attack on this critical information infrastructure, on the IT networks and systems and resources which are connected with your critical facilities, this will have a massive impact on your economy and your national security. It could cascade into a much bigger disaster affecting multiple other sectors, causing severe damage, losses, and destruction. That is how countries can be brought down to their knees, even without firing a single bullet. Right? With the right planning and right resources, cyber wars can be so crippling. It can bring down countries and governments. In the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, you actually witness high-intensity cyber wars which are going on. Right? From Russia, even from Ukraine and Western countries. There is a covert cyber war which has been going on from several months, where both sides have been targeting each other, trying to cripple each other's key infrastructure. Understood? So now, how do we defend this? If this is the level of threat, if tomorrow India could be brought to its knees by an enemy state without even going to war, without even fighting a physical war, then the risk and the threat is very severe, right? So what are we doing to protect our cyberspace? What measures have we taken to protect our IT infrastructure, to improve our cybersecurity, and especially to safeguard our critical infrastructure? So let's take a quick look at all these measures being taken by the Government of India. First, we'll look at the legal framework we have. I want you guys to take a look at the law, the legal framework which has been created, which deals with cyber threats. So it is covered under the IT Act, Information Technology Act, enacted by the Parliament in 2000. It's the primary law dealing with cyber crimes. and it also provides recognition and regulation for electronic commerce in the country. Basically, all your electronic transactions, any electronic transaction, be it sending an email, using social media applications, carrying out online banking transfers, or ordering something on e-commerce websites, right? Any electronic activity, any electronic communication between computer devices through a internet network becomes regulated under the IT Act. All electronic commerce, essentially, all forms of electronic digital transactions happening between your devices through the network, they all get regulated under the IT Act. Is that clear? So it covers cyber crimes and all forms of electronic commerce. This law is based on the UN Citral model, the UN model law on electronic commerce of 1996. Because by 1990s, around the world, adoption of computers had increased. Internet was being adopted. It was becoming popular. It was not just being used by governments, universities, etc., and by the military, but there was commercial adoption where private companies and individuals and private businesses had started using the internet and computer resources. So the UN brought out a model law for electronic commerce based on which India has brought out the IT Act. It is slightly inspired by it. We have taken some principles from here, and this forms your IT Act of 2000. So under the law, some key provisions include foreign nationals can also be booked. You can file a case against even foreign nationals and even unknown entities. In case of cyber crimes, in case of cyber attacks, you can go register a case even against foreign nationals and entities and unknown entities. Now, why is this important? Remember, in the last class, I told you one important feature about cyberspace. In the cyberspace, there are no geographical boundaries. It is difficult to establish jurisdiction. And more importantly, your attacker can be completely anonymous. You don't know who the attacker is. Is it an individual? Is it a group? Where are they carrying out the attack from? Because they would have masked their identity and their location and their IP address. So to account for these traits of cyberspace, these unique features of cyberspace, the law provides for pressing charges against foreign nationals as well and unknown entities as well. Your attacker could be anywhere. Someone who has committed a ransomware attack or a cyber fraud, right? Could be from some other country, or it could be a group operating from multiple countries and multiple jurisdictions. So this is an important feature which has been added. All right. So it creates a legal framework for all electronic transactions, including your e-governance, and gives legal recognition to digital records and digital signatures. This is what enables the digital delivery of services in the country. See, today, all of us are using digital documents, right? In many places, we don't even carry the actual document, the physical document, correct? If you look at KYC process, the know your customer process done by banks, financial institutions, mobile companies, they all do it remotely today. They don't physically visit your place. You just have to give the documents, right? You can sign digitally as well. You can switch on your camera, take a photo, take a video to confirm your identity. Everything happens digitally today. Your verification, right? Even receiving several services, receiving benefits from government as well, like subsidies, scholarships, pensions, everything can be done online today. All these online activities, online public services are possible because of this law. It is this law which gave validity, legal recognition for electronic records and your digital signatures. Understood? Your digital documents, your digital signatures have validity in law because of this law, because IT Act gives recognition to it and enables e-governance in the country. All right. It establishes the controller of certifying authorities to issue digital signatures and regulate digital signatures in the country. Digital signatures are unique to different organizations. It helps in authenticating documents. If you look at your IT records, your IT returns, for example, your Form 16 given by your employer, they will be digitally signed by the concerned authority. Now, who's giving these digital signatures? Who's verifying that it's correct or not? Who's ensuring it's unique for every organization? It's the controller of certifying authorities established by the IT Act. It regulates digital signatures. It issues them and regulates the whole sector of digital signatures. The law establishes an appellate tribunal to resolve any disputes arising with regard to cyber incidents, because these cases require certain specialization. It requires expertise to handle them. Your regular judiciary may not be able to handle these cases, which requires technical skills and technical knowledge, right? So an appellate tribunal, a quasi-judicial body, has been set up to look at the disputes. Old laws, old outdated colonial laws were updated to account for IT technology, to provide for net banking, online payments, digital transactions, to allow digital forensics to be used in criminal investigation, right? For all these purposes, the old laws like Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, the Bankers Book Evidence Act, Reserve Bank of India Act, and many other old laws, especially of colonial origin and the laws before 1990s, which didn't account for the technology, they were all amended through the IT Act. They were made compliant with new technologies. So today, if police can use digital evidence in investigation, right? If they can use cyber forensics in an investigation, it's because the changes have been made to IPC, CRPC, and Indian Evidence Act through the IT Act. Similarly, if online net banking, online transactions are possible, it's through changes made to the Bankers Book Act and RBI Act. So that is another important change. The old laws were updated to bring them online with the current technologies. Next, the law was amended in 2008 to account for new forms of cyber crimes, the new trends that were emerging in cyber crimes. To cover them, the law was amended to give an expanded coverage. So any circulation of sexually explicit material, especially which affects the dignity of another person, particularly that of women, right? Mainly to deal with rape videos, revenge porn, and gang rape videos which were starting to circulate on the internet. To tackle this menace, to protect the dignity of women, right? This specific provision was added, which prohibits the circulation of sexually explicit material. Video voyeurism, where the attacker will secretly watch. Voyeurism is the act of secretly watching someone else in their intimate life, in their personal life. So if an attacker has gained access to the system and secretly if they're watching through the camera, right? So this becomes video voyeurism, which is a punishable criminal offense. Cyber terrorism, breach of confidentiality, data leakage, e-commerce frauds, all these new forms of cyber crimes and frauds were covered through the amendment. So this is the basic law we have in India to deal with cyber crimes and to regulate information technology and electronic commerce. Is that clear? But however, the law has many problems. All right, the law is very controversial. Many experts have pointed out it's outdated. It does not suit the purpose today. It was brought out in 2000 with outdated provisions, and it's no longer relevant in 2023. Technology has evolved so much, right? IT Act does not account for half of the technologies, right? So this is where there is a strong demand to review the law and maybe bring out a new law. The government of India is already looking at it. The government of India is considering to repeal the IT Act and replace it with a more comprehensive law being referred to as the Digital India Bill to cover all digital technologies, digital services. A comprehensive law is being drafted. It's under work. It might happen very soon. Within few months, you might see Digital India Bill being tabled, which will comprehensively cover cyber crimes, all IT technologies, and digital transactions. All right? Because IT Act is not only outdated, but it has some critical shortcomings and critical flaws. For example, it has many controversial provisions. It has many controversial provisions which gives a lot of discretion to the authorities, which provides for very stringent action by the authorities, leading to the frequent misuse and abuse of the law, through which fundamental rights are being curbed by the police and by the governments. There are many such provisions under this act. For example, Section 66A of the IT Act. This was a notorious provision, a very deadly, dangerous provision. Thankfully, it does not exist anymore. It was thrown out by the Supreme Court as blatantly unconstitutional. This particular section, 66A, it dealt with so-called offensive messages sent through communication services. It provides punishments. It treats this as a crime which becomes non-bailable as well, and provides very strict punishments with jail term for sending any offensive message through communication platforms. Let's say you send a SMS or a WhatsApp forward or an email, or you post something on Facebook or Instagram. If it is deemed to be offensive for someone, right, for an individual or by a community, and if they file a case against you under this section, you will immediately get arrested. And bail becomes impossible under this provision. And since conviction can be easily achieved, as you would have sent something, right, the courts will simply go by the rule book. The punishment can also be severe, lasting several years in jail. Now, this was problematic because it does not define what is offensive. The very term offensive is subjective. Now, what is offensive to you may not be offensive to me, right? So, who will interpret this? Who will decide what is offensive? In applying the law, the police, the government were deciding, obviously. So, let's say some school student would post a cartoon which is mimicking politicians or government leaders. It's making fun of them. He would have just shared, right, because he found it funny. And some guy who takes offense to it, who's very loyal to these leaders or these parties, might go file a case, and that school student could get arrested. All right, some old man who's just forwarding the WhatsApp messages he's getting, he would have sent a forward, right, and someone else might deem it to be offensive to their religion or to their personal dignity. And if he files a case, the old person who has nothing to do with any crime would get picked up, arrested, no bail. They'll go through the court process and get punished with a jail term. This became a deadly provision where ruling parties started using this to target their critics, their opponents. If you post any critical article on any government leader, right? If you, let's say, post anything on a minister or a prime minister or chief minister or any political party, cases would be filed immediately, even for sharing cartoons. So this is your basic freedom of speech and expression, which is a guaranteed fundamental right under Article 19. Of course, there are reasonable restrictions for your free speech, but it does not apply for criticizing the government. Criticizing the government, criticizing the leaders, it's your birthright. You have every right to criticize the government and the leaders, or even make fun of any person, as long as it is not leading to violence or direct enmity, as long as it is not disrupting law and order, as long as it is not threatening the other individual. You have every right to criticize, even make fun of others. That's a basic fundamental right. That is what free speech and expression is all about. This important right was being curbed through Section 66A. It was primarily political parties misusing the police to target their critics and opponents. And many trivial cases were coming up where innocent people who had nothing to do with any such crime, they would get arrested and punished as well under this brutal provision. So in a landmark case, the Supreme Court struck down this provision as unconstitutional. It has thrown out this provision, saying that this provision has no place in a democracy. It's a direct violation of Article 19. It's ultra vires the Constitution. It's ultra vires the Constitution. And it was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of India. So this provision legally, technically does not exist under the IT Act anymore. It does not exist in the law books. All right, it's been struck down. But there is a disturbing report. Even Supreme Court has taken notice of this, that even though Supreme Court struck down Section 66A in 2015, it's been 8 years, still there are cases being filed under this provision because the orders have not been disseminated. Awareness has not been spread amongst the police and amongst local authorities and the local courts. There are cases still going on. With retrospective effect, all the pending cases were struck down in the Supreme Court in one go. Still cases are continuing many years after the Supreme Court struck it down. This is a disturbing development. And there are other provisions. You have Section 67, 68, 69 and subclauses under them, which also have equally problematic provisions, which is open for discretion, open for interpretation by the police. Now that 66A is not available for them, they are using the other provisions to arrest people if they criticize the government and the leaders. So the abuse of IT Act continues, which is a threat to your Article 19, a threat to your right to free speech and expression. This is a critical flaw where the law is being misused and abused, causing your fundamental rights to be breached. That is why there is a strong demand to throw this law out, repeal the law and bring a new law in place. So Government of India is working on it. You might see the draft bill being presented and eventually it might be tabled as well in the parliament. Is that clear? Now, do you know which case was this? Which was this historic case at the Supreme Court where the provision was struck down? Very good. Jhansi Rani, Abhijit, Varsha, Ragini and others. Prabalika, they've all given the right answer. Please write it down. It was in the Shreya Singhal case. It was in the Shreya Singhal judgment, 2015. It was a landmark case where Supreme Court struck down the provision and criticized the government for misusing these provisions. Now, let us look at the institutions we have for cybersecurity in the country. What specific institutions have been created? What is their role? This is actually very factual. So I'll go through it quickly. I'll help you understand what the institutions are, what is their role, what is their structure. First, we have CERT-In, Computer Emergency Response Team India, which is the nodal civilian agency. It's the nodal civilian agency to protect and defend the Indian cyberspace. Is that clear? CERT-In, Computer Emergency Response Team India. It is established under the Ministry of Electronics and IT. It's under the MeitY Ministry. It's under Ministry of Electronics and IT. It was set up in 2004. So its primary role is to deal with all cybersecurity threats. Understood? So its primary function involves acting as an early warning agency. It regularly scans the cyberspace, the global cyberspace. It looks at emerging threats through its National Watch and Alert System, which is a 24/7 early warning system. Because here you can't take a break, right? Cyber domain doesn't take a break. It's 365 days a year, 24/7. So this institution is a nodal civilian agency for cybersecurity, and it primarily acts as an early warning agency. That's one of the primary roles, and it performs few other functions as well. It has legal validity under the IT Act. It's designated as the national agency to perform these following functions. All right, so IT Act has given legal recognition to CERT-In and defines what functions does it perform. So it analyzes the cyber incidents which are occurring in India and around the world. It scans the global cyberspace, looks out for emerging malwares, studies them, understands the threat, provides forecasting, analysis, and disseminates the alert to all the stakeholders. It has to communicate the threat to the government, the private sector, and to the common public by engaging the media, by working with media outlets and social media and internet platforms. CERT-In has to communicate the threat to everyone, because cybersecurity is something which is a collective effort. Just government alone can't ensure cybersecurity. All of us, each and every one of us, play a role in cybersecurity. Individually, we have to ensure our phones, our devices are safe. We have to ensure that all the cybersecurity tools are installed, right? You have to constantly update them, update your operating system, update all the applications, because with every update, new security patches will keep coming that will help deal with all emerging threats. Is that clear? So you need to take basic measures. You should have basic awareness. You should know that you shouldn't fall victim to a phishing attack. If someone gives you a call, asks you for an OTP, you should have common sense not to share the OTP, right? You should have basic common sense to identify a phishing email or phishing message, which is a scam, right? Many people fall prey to it. This is where people need more awareness. So the people also play a role. The public plays a big role along with the government and the private sector in enhancing cybersecurity of the nation. So CERT-In, as the nodal agency, scans the global cyberspace, looks out for the threats, studies the malwares, looks at the impact, and warns all the agencies. All the stakeholders are warned. It also initiates emergency measures to counter the threat. It defends the cyberspace against these threats. Is that clear? Meaning counter-attacks are launched if required. These threats are countered by CERT-In. So to repel the attackers, to push back the attacks which are coming against Indian networks, Indian systems, counter operations are also carried out by CERT-In. Is that clear? Apart from that, it coordinates with all stakeholders, issues some guidelines, advisories, etc. It even cooperates internationally with other CERT organizations of other countries. It will share information with others, coordinate with them, because cyber threats are global threats, right? A ransomware in US will affect India within seconds, right? So there is no jurisdiction here. You have to cooperate with other countries as well. So CERT-In works with these certs of other governments as well to provide for cyber safety in India. It even runs a program called NISAP, the National Information Security Assurance Program, to promote awareness and encourage government private entities to adopt the best safety security standards, which is ISO certified. It will encourage government offices, government departments, private companies to follow the best safety standards under this program. It will prescribe the best safety standards, and those who implement them are given ISO certification, which could help them get some incentives from the government for improving cybersecurity. Right? The government can provide incentives to those organizations and companies which are following the best cyber safety standards as prescribed by CERT-In under the NISAP program. So these are the primary roles performed by CERT-In. Is that clear? It's under the Ministry of Electronics and IT. It's a civilian agency manned by civilian officials. It's not an intelligence agency, not a military agency. It's a civilian agency comprising of experts who protect the Indian cyberspace and counter and repel the attacks and warn all the stakeholders. That is their primary role. Next, we have a policy in place brought out by the then Manmohan Singh government to enhance cybersecurity in the country. To streamline our cybersecurity measures, a national policy was adopted in 2013 that lays down the path and goals for India with regard to cybersecurity and cyber safety. All right. So under this policy, two new institutions were created to enhance cybersecurity in the country. Two new institutions were set up. Two new bodies were set up. We are going to look at both of them. NCIIPC and NCCC. These were the two new bodies created by the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013. All right. Two new cyber bodies were created to enhance cybersecurity. So let's see what they are and what do they do. Let's look at that and we'll come back to the policy later. The NCIIPC stands for National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. A dedicated cyber agency has been set up to provide exclusive protection to the critical information infrastructure of the country. Is that clear? All the IT resources and networks of our critical infrastructure, they are guarded, protected by NCIIPC. It has been set up under NTRO. As you know, NTRO is the Elite Technical Intelligence Agency of India, which performs electronic and technical surveillance. So under NTRO, under this Technical Intelligence Agency, NCIIPC has been established, and it is specific for the critical information infrastructure of the country. Understood? It will work closely with other stakeholders like CERT-In and NCCC and the Defense Cyber Agency, which has also been established. It will work closely with all these other entities. These are the four major entities we have, the four major institutions. CERT-In we already studied. Apart from that, you have NCIIPC, NCCC, Defense Cyber Agency. Four major agencies are established. So NCIIPC is mainly responsible for critical information infrastructure to defend the infrastructure against any inbound attacks. All right. So this again is a civilian cyber agency. It is a civilian cyber agency manned by civilian officials under NTRO. Got it? Next, there are sectoral certs as well for critical sectors like defense and finance. Specific certs have been set up to protect the defense infrastructure and the infrastructure of the banking financial system. All right, apart from the main cert, there are few sectoral certs for defense and finance. Then if you look at the armed forces, Army, Navy and Air Force, they have their own cybersecurity units to look after their own cybersecurity. Apart from those smaller units, we have these four main entities: CERT-In, NCIIPC, NCCC and Defense Cyber Agency. Now, what is NCCC? National Cyber Coordination Center. It is basically a coordination platform established by the Cybersecurity Policy of 2013. It has been established under CERT-In. Under CERT-In, there is this platform called NCCC, which helps achieve coordination with all the entities needed. Now imagine India is under attack. Let's say a major cyber threat has emerged. Maybe a very deadly malware is spreading, which is threatening our banking system. Or let's say there is a cyber war campaign launched by an enemy country and our cyberspace is under attack. It's a conflict, it's a war which has started. In such instances, CERT-in, which is the nodal civilian agency, will have to coordinate immediately with all the other entities. This could be important ministries like Defense Ministry, Foreign Ministry, Home Ministry, Prime Minister's Office, right? It'll have to coordinate with other cyber agencies like NCIIPC, or with intelligence agencies like NTRO, RAW, and IB. It may have to coordinate with the armed forces, specifically with Defense Cyber Agency, which is a dedicated military agency. So, to achieve that coordination with different entities during an attack, even with media, private sector, and the public if needed, to achieve this coordination to share information, right, NCCC has been established. Its purpose is to act as a coordinating platform where the required threat and data is shared with each other. It has been given legal validity under Section 69B of the IT Act. So it acts as a threat monitoring platform, looks out for these deadly threats against India, right? It's under CERT-in itself. If there is a threat which needs coordination with other entities, if CERT-in alone is not able to handle it, because CERT-in is bound to defend the attacks as well, defend against the attacks. So when CERT-in needs the assistance and coordination with other agencies like NCIIPC, NTRO, our intelligence agencies and armed forces, our other government ministries, right? That coordination will be achieved through NCCC platform. It's not a separate organization. It's a platform, a coordination platform that brings CERT-in together with all the concerned stakeholders. So these were the two new entities that were established through the National Cybersecurity Policy. Is that clear? These are the two new cybersecurity related bodies created in 2013 by the National Cybersecurity Policy. Apart from that, it provides a way forward for improving India's preparedness. It basically charts a path for India to ensure that we are prepared for all cyber threats. For example, it plans to create a workforce of 5 lakh cybersecurity professionals, because this is something we are lacking. The human resource is lacking in India. Even though we are a leading country with regard to number of engineers we produce, the number of software engineers we produce, and a leading IT hub, still we have a deficiency of cybersecurity professionals. That's because at the college level, at the university level, enough courses were not being provided a few years ago. Before 2010, you didn't have specialized courses in cybersecurity. There would be some certificate courses, etc., but you didn't have graduate options or degree options. So the cybersecurity policy today has encouraged our higher education institutions to provide specialization in cybersecurity. Today, you can get a B degree, a BTech degree in cybersecurity itself. You can become a professional, then go on to specialize, do your master's, your doctorate as well, thus contributing to the cyber force of India, the human resource of India, which can man all these key institutions. So that is one goal established under the policy. It suggests that fiscal incentives should be given to companies that adopt the best safety and security measures to encourage them to follow the best standards. It also highlights the importance of protecting the privacy of citizens' data and reducing economic losses that occur because of cyber crimes and data theft. It basically gave a push for a data protection law. It pointed out that a data protection law is needed to safeguard citizens' data privacy and data security in order to minimize their economic losses, to minimize data theft and cyber crimes. A data protection law was called for by this policy. All right. So similarly, there were some other provisions as well, like we should build indigenous technologies, because right now we are very dependent on imports. if you look at computer hardware, right, India is way behind the curve. Most of the key hardware in India, not just your computers, even your phones, right, even the infrastructure, the switching equipment, the mobile internet infrastructure, everything is largely imported, right? We are way behind in semiconductor manufacturing. So what if hostile countries are planting bugs, creating security backdoors in the hardware itself? Like Chinese companies like Huawei, for example, Chinese telecom companies like Huawei and ZTE Telecom, there is a suspicion that they are closely connected to Chinese intelligence. And apparently, they might create security backdoors in the devices and the switching equipment, the mobile switching equipment that they are installing around the world. So, this could become a vulnerability. Similarly, in software, even though we are a software hub, we have a major challenge with regard to operating system, right? We are largely dependent on foreign vendors. We're dependent on Microsoft, Google, Apple, right? Even Linux based open source platforms may not be entirely safe. So, indigenizing the technologies is very important to ensure their complete safety and security. For example, there was one incident many years ago where India detected few vulnerabilities in Microsoft OS, in Windows OS, which were apparently being installed in key government offices, in Prime Minister's office and other key ministries. When computers were being put up in 1990s and early 2000, India noticed that when a security audit was done, in the operating system, there were few vulnerabilities which was believed to be done deliberately by the Americans. As US can have leverage on Microsoft, potentially they might have forced Microsoft to create the backdoors through which their intelligence agencies can hack into these systems, right? So when you depend on imports, this is a risk you run. So you need to focus on indigenization. Recently, we have brought out an indigenous operating system. Have you heard about it? Have you heard about indigenous OS, which has been launched? The Maya operating system. Very good. So please take that as assignment. Read more about it. Maya OS or Maya operating system. It's a Linux-based open source operating system, which marks India's efforts towards indigenization. All right. In fact, many sensitive computers in key ministries, key offices, in key departments like ISRO, DRDO, our intelligence agencies, etc. Some key computers, they don't use either Mac or Android or even Windows, right? We stay away from them. Sensitive computers don't use any of these standard operating systems because there is always a risk that it could be bugged. So we prefer some open source Linux based platforms, and today we are making better progress. We have come out with an indigenous OS called the Maya OS. So please read about it, the Bharat operating system, the Bharat OS, the Maya OS. Please read about it. I want you guys to take this as homework. All right. So other than that, the policy talked about setting up testing labs to check the safety of the equipment which we are installing in the country. It talked about enhancing our capabilities. So such suggestions were provided. It was basically a roadmap. You can call it a roadmap for improving cyber safety in India. All right, but the biggest change was the establishment of the two institutions, NCIIPC for defending our critical infrastructure and NCCC for coordination. These were the major changes that happened through the National Cybersecurity Policy. Now, before we talk about a global convention, I want to mention the Defense Cyber Agency. Do you know that we have a dedicated military agency today for cyber warfare? It was one of the major reforms that was introduced recently as part of the 2018-2019 defense reforms. Many new agencies and institutions were being created, right? These were long pending recommendations. Since Kargil war, we had some important committees that had recommended such an institution, a military force, an armed force, to deal with cyber warfare. So finally, such an agency has been established called Defense Cyber Agency. It will be a tri-service agency. It's a tri-service agency. It draws personnel from all three services, from Army, Navy, and Air Force. All right. It functions under IDS, the Integrated Defense Staff, which is an integrated headquarters for all tri-service operations. When three services are operating together, right, these operations and tasks come under IDS, the Integrated Defense Staff. So Defense Cyber Agency has been recently established in 2018 under Integrated Defense Staff. Its primary role is to develop defensive weapons and also to develop offensive weapons to engage in cyber warfare, to defend India from hostile countries against cyber war, and also, if required, to launch offensive cyber wars against other target countries. So a dedicated military agency has been set up. It is different from your civilian agencies. Please understand that. This is a military agency. It's an armed force comprising of soldiers. All right. Don't confuse this with your civilian agencies, which we discussed already. Your civilian cyber agencies include CERT-In, your NCCC, which is under CERT-In itself, NTRO, which is a technical intelligence agency, and NCIIPC, which is under NTRO. All these are civilian agencies manned by civilian officials. Is that clear? Whereas Defense Cyber Agency is an armed force manned by soldiers from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. It's a tri-service agency which will specialize in cyber warfare. It has even conducted few mock exercises. Its primary task is to conduct such mock drills and also to develop the cyber warfare doctrine of India. It is working on a cyber warfare doctrine to outline how India will react to cyber wars, how we are going to respond and retaliate. And accordingly, required weapons are being developed and even mock drills exercises are being conducted. This cyber agency is headquartered in New Delhi. It's headquartered in New Delhi, functions under the IDS, the Integrated Defense Staff. All right. So these are the major cyber agencies of India. A list of civilian agencies and one armed force, one military agency. Now coming to the global framework, there is no UN convention as of now. Of course, there is one being negotiated that deals with cyber crimes. Currently, there is a UN convention on cyber crimes, which is still being debated. The UN is working on a global framework for cyber crimes. It's still a proposed framework. So since there is no global UN-led framework as of now, there's only one other convention called the Budapest Convention. The Budapest Convention on Cyber Crimes. It was established by the Council of Europe, which is a regional organization of Europe, and it was established in 2001 and it came into force in 2004. All right, remember the basic facts. The Budapest Convention, also called the Cybercrime Convention, right? The Council of Europe's Cybercrime Convention. It was brought out by the Council of Europe in 2001, adopted in 2004, and today it's the only convention we have at the global level to deal with all forms of cyber crimes, be it cyber frauds, data theft, ransomware attacks, right? Any kind of cyber crime is dealt with under the Budapest Convention. This is not from European Union. Don't get confused. EU is a different organization. This is Council of Europe, which is another regional grouping. So around 64 countries are part of it, but it's primarily led by Western countries. It's dominated by Western countries. Is that clear? So those who are part of the convention, they have to adopt some of the principles into their national law, and they have to take up some obligations. If you join this convention, if you sign and ratify the convention, you will have to incorporate these principles into your national law against cyber crimes, and you have to cooperate with other members. You may have to interconnect your networks. You may have to share data and information which is sought during investigation of cyber crimes. Is that clear? So that is what the convention expects. It lays down a set of principles and standards which has to be adopted in the national law of the country, and they should cooperate with other members, help each other in investigation. All right, they basically help in investigation, in collecting evidence to tackle cyber crimes. As cyber crimes are global in nature, right? The criminals could be from anywhere, from any country. So this convention plays a big role. But however, what is interesting is that India has not joined the Budapest Convention. Kindly remember this. There has been a debate in India whether should we join or not, and it has been a controversial debate. The Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal ministry for cyber crimes, please note this down. Nodal ministry for cyber crimes is MHA. As cyber crimes are a law and order issue, MHA is the nodal ministry at the national level. That's why MHA has set up the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, where you can report cyber crimes. This is one initiative of MHA. If you are a victim of cyber crimes, you can report them here at the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. It also runs the Cyber Swachhta Kendras to promote cyber safety. All right. So MHA coordinates with your state police, which is primarily responsible for dealing with cyber crimes. Right? Every state will have these dedicated cyber police stations, or even regular police stations might be equipped with the capabilities to deal with cyber crimes. So the MHA coordinates with the state police forces and the cybercrime units to tackle cyber crimes in the country, which is becoming an increasing threat. So it has all these initiatives to deal with cyber crimes. So MHA is strongly supporting India signing and joining the Budapest Convention, because we are going to get international cooperation. All right, MHA supports joining the Budapest Convention. Since we are not able to crack many cyber crimes due to its transnational nature, MHA feels that by signing and joining the Budapest Convention, we'll get international assistance. We'll get cooperation from others in investigation and collecting evidence, which can help us crack cyber crimes. But this position of MHA is strongly opposed by Intelligence Bureau, which is responsible for domestic intelligence. The IB feels that the obligations of Budapest Convention can become a national security threat, since it is mainly dominated by Western countries. Right? It requires you to integrate networks, share data and information. IB feels that this could compromise on our security, on our sovereignty. So IB has strongly opposed India joining Budapest Convention, and hence the government also has decided to not take this forward. As of now, we are not part of Budapest Convention. However, there's a parallel UN convention being negotiated. We are part of the negotiations, right? So that is something you have to track. Right now, the details are not really available in the public domain. Very limited details are available. But going forward in few months, you will see more details about the UN Convention on cyber crimes. So please keep track of that development. All right. Previously, Russia had made an attempt to push for a UN convention, but this Russian attempt failed. It didn't move forward as others weren't supporting the Russian initiative. Now, see, this is where you should understand that Western countries, they have a disproportionate control on the internet and the cyberspace. Even though no government or no single company controls the internet, it's a decentralized peer-to-peer network, right? Western governments, through their intelligence agencies, through their companies, they have a disproportionate control on the internet. The US and European countries. Similarly, China, through its various companies which have global domination like Huawei, ZTE and others, China also has a disproportionate control on the internet. Western countries even have intelligence initiatives like the Five Eyes Alliance. You might have heard about it recently, right? The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance between US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. These countries, they have the capability to intercept every communication, the whole internet communication, satellite communication, right? Any kind of electronic communication interference can be carried out by Five Eyes Alliance. That is the capabilities they've built. So this is where India faces a disadvantage. Even though Western countries are friendly, you can't trust them entirely. Even friendly countries spy on each other. China's dominating control and reach on the internet and its ability to wage cyber war is something that really threatens India. Russia also has a significant presence and influence. Israel is another global leader in cyber wars and cyber espionage. So India has a lot to learn. We need to, scale up our cyber capabilities, not just for cyber warfare to defend and carry out offensive operations, but even to engage in cyber espionage, to spy on other countries. It becomes critical in today's world to safeguard our national interests. So this completes my discussion on cybersecurity. I've given a way forward at the end, just a few suggestions on how we can improve cybersecurity. You can try to use these statements in your answers when you're writing mains answers. You can suggest that we should consider joining Budapest Convention because it can help us in getting assistance to tackle cyber crimes. Right? The Defense Cyber Agency can play a big role in improving our cyber warfare capabilities. You can suggest we can learn from Tallinn Manual of NATO, the NATO military alliance. It has a manual called the Tallinn Manual. All right. It has brought out new editions called 2.0 and 3.0. These are manuals on cyber wars. It's basically a NATO study on cyber warfare and what measures need to be taken to counter cyber wars. So this is something that could help India. As we are close to NATO countries, we do have close military collaboration with NATO as well. We can draw inspiration from the Tallinn Manual, right? The Tallinn Manual deals with the basic standards in cyber warfare, right? To understand the threats, to respond to cyber war threats. So India can learn from the Tallinn Manual of NATO. That's one suggestion you can provide. Or in prelims, UPSC might ask, what is Tallinn Manual? What is it related to? It's related to cyber wars and cyber security. It's a military document brought out by the NATO. Use the concept of air gapping for critical systems. Air gapping is where key systems are completely isolated from the network. All right, they're called air gapped systems. Important systems that hold sensitive data, they should be completely cut off from the outside world. They should have no access to the outside world. Let's say a critical system in Prime Minister's office, a key system in the headquarters of the army, which has very sensitive, delicate data. Such key systems, they should be cut off from the world entirely. These air-gapped systems, they will not have any external connections. They'll have no Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi connection, no LAN cable, right? No floppy disk, no CD, DVD, ROMs, no USB ports, nothing. Basically, they'll have zero external connections, both physically and virtually. All right. So these standalone computers, which are safely locked away with extensive physical security, which have no connection with external world, they are called air-gapped systems. This is a standard industry practice. Even private companies use this. when they are storing key information, their trade secrets and intellectual property, they ensure that these systems are air gapped. All right. It's almost impossible to hack into air gapped systems. The only way is you need physical access. Physically, you have to reach the system to hack into the system. And physical security can always be ensured, right? You have many methods through which physical safety can be ensured. So such air gapped systems should become a standard, both in government and in private industry, where key systems holding the key information is completely cut off from the outside world. No external connection should exist. All right. So all these measures can be suggested. You can suggest a cyber registry to form a database of IT professionals, so employers can connect with them, hire the right professionals to scale up their cybersecurity force, right? All these suggestions can be provided. You can get a little creative as well. Look at some editorials and columns which come up, right? Maybe jot down some key suggestions that are provided by the authors, and you can use them directly in your answers. So I've given few points like this. Similarly, you can make your own list and use them directly in the answers. So this completes my discussion on cybersecurity. All right. So let's take a break. Let's take a come from this chapter, and then we'll proceed to the next module. So first question is from Chituri. Chituri is asking, what's the process for adoption of a policy and when can it be done? See, the government has complete powers and authority to come out with any policy. Concerned ministries will come out with the policy. They'll even place it in the public domain to invite feedback from the public and all the stakeholders. And once they finalize the policy, it's presented to the Union Cabinet. The Cabinet is the one which approves the policy, and it's notified. So government will come up with the policy with consultation with the public and then notifies it as well. Kamlesh is asking, where does the world famous hacking group such as Anonymous stand in the domain of cybersecurity and threats? During Russia-Ukraine war, they started siding with humanity, declared and carried out attacks against Russian defenses. Some of you might have heard about this popular hacktivist group called Anonymous. It's basically a hacker group, a group of loosely bound cyber activists around the world. It's not a structured organization. It does not belong to any country as such. It's a group of hackers, right, who act on behalf of this Anonymous outfit. The outfit itself is called Anonymous. The group also is made very popular by the use of the Guy Fawkes mask, the V for Vendetta mask. Some of you might have seen this, right? So that is the symbol they use. They basically operate anonymously. They claim to stand for pro-democracy, pro-human rights. So any issue which comes up in the world, which threatens human rights, which threatens democratic rights. So these groups, they target those entities which are violating such basic rights. Like Russia was brought under attack by anonymous hackers, right? So it's basically a hacktivist group, which acts like a vigilante group. It acts like an activist group carrying out these hacks to target any organization, any entity which threatens human rights and fundamental democratic rights. Kamal Pal is asking, is there any difference between Integrated Defense Staff and CDS? CDS is an office. It's a position occupied by an individual officer. IDS is an entire organization. It's a tri-service organization. We will study this in the last chapter. All right, don't worry. I'll explain what is IDS in slight detail. We'll also study CDS in detail. CDS is a very important reform that has been carried out. So in the last chapter on security forces and agencies of India, there we will study what is CDS, what is IDS. Next, Atharv is asking, can UN Convention for Cybercrime affect the proposed Indian Digital Act? Definitely yes. The UN Convention for Cybercrime, which is being negotiated, it started from 2021. It's still going on. If it is adopted, it will become the first ever global convention from the UN dealing with cybercrimes. It creates a global framework for investigating cyber crimes, for cooperation between countries, and for prosecuting cyber crimes. This convention will be binding. If you look at the negotiations which are going on, it's very clear that this convention will be binding on all UN member states, like UN Convention on Law of the Sea, right? UN clause is binding. Similarly, this proposed convention on cybercrime will be binding. So it will have an impact on all your related laws, be it the data protection law we have already passed, the Digital Data Protection Act, and the proposed Digital India Act. It will have an impact because you have to adopt those UN standards into your national law. So that remains a concern for many countries because it might affect your sovereignty. It might affect the laws we already have. So we need to see how it develops in the future. Right now, we can't comment on it. Let the convention come out, let it be adopted, then we'll take a look at it. So in current affairs, please pay attention to this topic. Last question, Kamlesh is asking, what steps has India taken to carry out capacity building as well as quantity building when it comes to cybersecurity personnel? See, first of all, we have paid a lot of attention to raising a dedicated cybersecurity force, as in to build the human resource needed. So at college, university level, in the last 15 years, cybersecurity professional courses are being offered, which means we have more graduates, more professionals coming out from colleges and universities who can be employed by the private industry and even by the government organizations, right? Along with that, we have stepped up our program towards general awareness amongst the public, amongst the private sector. We are urging the private industry to focus more on cybersecurity, to recruit more cybersecurity professionals, train them, so that we have a dedicated workforce that is available, right? So from higher education to the government sector and the private sector, a lot of efforts are being taken to create a dedicated cyber security workforce, to create enough professionals who can contribute to India's cybersecurity. All right. So guys, these were some of the questions. Now, please look at the PYQs. Take a look. It's all very simple, very straightforward. It's all based on what we have been discussing, what we've been covering. If you can understand the basic concept, be good in current affairs, trust me, you can write very good answers. These questions are not at all complicated. That is the beauty of internal security. It might seem little difficult initially. Once you cover the syllabus, once you revise everything and be good in current affairs, you can easily write good answers and score very well in these questions. See this question in 2013, very basic question on social media. What are social networking sites? What security implications do they present? Very straightforward. So you define social media, explain what are social networking sites, give examples in the introduction. In the body, talk about the misuse of social media. Talk about all the threats that arise from it, like propaganda, spread of fake news and misinformation, right? Which leads to social engineering, which could also enable organized crime. Give examples for each of them as we discussed. So that explains the answer. The body is covered. Then conclude the answer. In the conclusion, explain what can be done. How do we deal with the threat? What is India doing? Right? How are we dealing with fake news? How are we dealing with the misuse of social media? Mention the IT rules we have introduced to regulate social media. And that completes your answer. This question is on cyber warfare and how terror groups also have started engaging in cyber attacks. Very simple, very straightforward. What threat do they pose? How cyber warfare has become a bigger threat than even terror outfits like Al-Qaeda. What do you understand by cyber warfare? Can you outline the measures India has taken and what is India's vulnerability? Essentially, they are drawing a comparison between cyber attacks and terrorism, right? So 20 years ago, the biggest security threat was terror groups like Al-Qaeda, right? But today, cyber warfare has become the biggest threat. These virtual wars, they can cripple the country. So explain that. Explain what is a cyber war. Compare that with terrorism. Point out how cyber war is a much bigger threat than even your regular terrorism that we see. Even terror groups have started building cyber capabilities, right? Al-Qaeda, Islamic State are using social media platforms to carry out their propaganda. They are using these platforms to even mount cyber attacks, to carry out cyber terrorism. So clearly, cyber warfare has become a larger threat than regular terrorism that we have seen. Based on that, discuss our vulnerability, where the gaps exist in India, the legal shortcomings, institutional shortcomings, and then explain how India is preparing for the threat. See, one suggestion you can say is that, one criticism you can provide is that in India, the structure is very complex. If you saw, we have many institutions, multiple institutions have been created, and that only creates confusion. We have Defense Cyber Agency, we have CERT-In, NCIIPC, NCCC, NTRO. So we have created so many institutions, and sometimes the roles overlap, right? So that could be a constructive criticism. You can say that we should streamline this. We should have maybe one civilian agency, one military agency, and we need to streamline the institutional architecture. Point out the legal vacuum we have. IT Act is outdated, right? We are not part of Budapest Convention. So point out the shortcomings and provide suggestions how we can improve, right? So that completes your answer. See, this question was on a digital armed force, the role of the cybersecurity policy, which we studied. Next, see how internet social media can be misused by non-state actors to create security threats. Suggest guidelines to curb the threat. Very simple, all straightforward questions based on what we have already covered. Look at this question based on Justice B.N. Srikrishna Committee report regarding data protection law. So all these current topics, because in 2018, the Srikrishna Committee submitted the report on data protection. That's why the question was asked. So today there might be a question on the Data Protection Act, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which we studied in the last class. You might be asked to evaluate the law. What are the advantages? What are the shortcomings? Right? That is what we discussed. So these are the kind of questions you can expect in your mains exam. There can be questions in prelims as well. For example, basic questions on cyber threats, on malwares. These could be related to science and technology, right? Or questions related to the laws and policies and the institutions that we have. Very straightforward, factual questions in prelims. A question on CERT-In, or question on NCIIPC, or what is critical information infrastructure. So you can expect all these basic questions in your prelims also. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Let's look at money laundering and terrorist financing. And after that, we shall take a look at border management and border security. We are headed towards the last part of our syllabus right now. All right. So money laundering, terror financing, border management, border security. Once we complete this, we will take a look at security forces and security agencies of India. The last chapter is actually very, very factual. UPSC is asking you to study the role and mandate of Indian security forces and agencies. Like, for example, we have already covered a few, like NIA, right? We have understood what is NIA, what is its role. Like that, we have to cover many other security forces and agencies of India. So we'll keep that to the last. That's the last topic. But first, let's focus on money laundering and later border management and border security. These are very small topics, all right? But many questions have come from here as well. The topic is very closely linked with economy. Money laundering is very closely connected with Indian economy as well, right? Even there you can expect a question. So it becomes a topic under internal security also. Because money laundering is not just an economic offense. It's not just an economic threat. It's a national security threat. It poses a direct threat to our national security. And you already know why. In the previous chapters, I've already pointed out why money laundering is a national security risk. We have understood how money laundering is connected to organized crime, such as drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and how these are connected with terrorist financing, right? I've been mentioning this in every chapter. Money laundering shares a direct connection with organized crime and they in turn are connected with terrorist financing. We have actually studied this under almost every single chapter. Under terrorism, right? Naxalism, Northeast insurgency, everywhere we saw the same connections emerge. How terrorists and insurgents are connected with criminal organizations and money laundering networks, and how there exists this symbiotic relationship between the three. So, here in this chapter, we'll explore this further. We'll understand what exactly is money laundering, what is this process, how is money laundered, how does it threaten our economy and security, and what measures do we have to counter it. Is there any global measure? Is there any global framework and organization to deal with money laundering? And then what measures has India taken? That's it. These are the three basic topics we have to cover. Now, first, let me provide you a basic definition of money laundering. All right. Then, based on that, we'll understand the different steps involved and the process involved in money laundering. In simple words, money laundering is the process of converting your black money into white. It's an illegal activity. It's an illegal process through which illegal wealth acquired through illegal activities is converted into legal wealth. Is that clear? So illegally gained wealth, which is mainly through illegal activities, which is against the law. These are basically proceeds of crime. Criminal activities, illegal activities generate wealth. That wealth is illegal. It's unaccounted. It's black money. If you convert this into legitimate wealth and assets, that process which is used to convert the illegal wealth into legal wealth is called money laundering. What is laundering? What do you mean by laundering or laundry? It's about cleaning, washing. That's the literal meaning of it. So in money laundering, illegal money, which is also called dirty money, it is laundered, it is washed, it is cleaned. Not literally, of course, but through the process, the dirt on the money is removed. What is the dirt on the illegal wealth? Again, it's not physical dirt I'm talking about. When wealth is generated through illegal activities and sources, there is a dirt attached to it. The dirt is nothing but the source. Where the money came from. How did this money originate? How was this wealth created? And who owns this wealth? This is the dirt on illegal money. Is that clear? This is the dirt attached to black money. Black money or illegal wealth, which is generated through illegal criminal activities, it has a dirt attached to it, which is nothing but the source, from which illegal source was it generated, and who owns this money. Now, if somehow, if you can erase this dirt, if you can launder this, if you can clean this dirt, if you can show that this money came from a clean source, if you can show that the money belongs to someone else, basically you conceal the actual owner. If you're able to do these two things, then your money becomes clean. All right. One, cover the source. Conceal the source where the money came from. Show that it came from a clean source. Right? Show that as legitimate wealth. Second, distance this money, this black money, from the actual owner. Conceal the actual owner, and your job is done. The money now becomes clean. It becomes white, and you can use it for all economic transactions. This entire process, this illegal process, is called money laundering. But of course, it's not as simple as it sounds. It's very complicated, and it's a global level scandal that takes place. This can't be done by one person or by a small group of people. This is a global level nexus that exists between corrupt government officials, government leaders as well. Private companies will be involved, banks and financial institutions will be involved, along with criminals and terrorists. Understood? So this involves the effort of several entities in between. There are many middlemen involved in laundering money. This can't be done so easily. It's a very complicated process. All right. Corrupt banks and financial institutions, private companies and consulting firms, corrupt government officials and government leaders, politicians, political parties, and even your global institutions sometimes. Not the whole organization, but there could be a few corrupt entities, along with criminals, terrorist elements who collude together to pull off this global level scandal called money laundering. All right. It remains a global menace, a challenge to every single country, not just to India. So, first, let's understand how black money is generated. Now, can you guys tell me what are the sources of illegal wealth? You tell me in the comments what activities can generate black money. Be very specific, don't give random answers. Taking bribes, okay? Tax evasion, very good. Drug trafficking, hawala transactions, corruption, drugs and arms trafficking, human trafficking, kidnapping, taking ransoms, real estate transactions, sales without tax, sale of banned substances, stealing idols and smuggling them. Very good. Now let me summarize this. You guys have given the correct answer. Let us summarize it and categorize it accordingly. One major source of black money is organized criminal activity. Now you know what types of organized crimes exist. Drug trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking, wildlife trafficking, even idols and antique items which can be trafficked, right? Any such contraband, any such illegal substance or material which is being smuggled and sold, this generates illegal wealth, right? This is a major source of black money. All these are illegal criminal activities prohibited by the law. Is that clear? You can even add cyber crimes to the list. Cyber crime is also a type of organized crime. Apart from organized crime, corruption within the government, where bribes are being taken by ministers, government officials, politicians, etc. This again becomes unaccounted wealth. Obviously, they won't report this wealth. They don't pay taxes on it. This illegal wealth generated through bribes, through corruption, is another major source of black money or illegal wealth. Then finally, the last one, tax evasion. If high net worth individuals, especially celebrities, who earn thousands of crores of revenue, hundreds of crores of revenue, right? If they don't pay taxes and conceal part of their income. Similarly, if private corporations, if they underreport their profits deliberately to pay lower taxes to the government, and if they hide part of their revenue, right? This again becomes black money. The money they're concealing from the government. It could be a movie star, a movie celebrity, a cricket personality, or any athlete, or even founders of various companies, owners of large industries, the organizations themselves, the private companies, right? If they conceal their actual income or revenue, conceal the wealth, don't pay taxes on it, if they try to avoid paying taxes by hiding their actual wealth and income, whatever they're concealing, that money, that unaccounted money becomes black money. It becomes illegal wealth. So these are the primary sources through which black money is generated. Now, what is the dirt on this money? I'm sure all of you can answer this. The dirt on this money is one, the source, where the money came from. Did it come from drug smuggling? Did it come from bribes taken by government officials or ministers, or through tax evasion? Second, who owns this money? Whom does it belong to? Now, this is the dirt on it. Now, these entities, these elements, they might be making crores of rupees through these illegal activities. But trust me, they cannot spend a single rupee openly and freely. You think an IAS officer who's corrupt, who's taken hundreds of crores as bribe, do you think he can go out and purchase estates, properties, luxury cars? He can't do that. He'll get caught. There are checks and balances in the system, in the banking system, financial system, right? There are thorough checks on every high value transaction. Any transaction above 50,000 rupees invites further scrutiny by the banking and other concerned authorities. If there are any fraudulent transactions happening in the system, immediately red flags will go up. Further inquiries are done on the back end. From the banks to RBI to IT department, enforcement directorate, financial intelligence unit, they all keep a check on suspicious transactions and fraudulent transactions in the economy. You cannot spend a single rupee which is unaccounted. You will get caught eventually, right? Initially, you might get away with it, but beyond a certain point, you will get caught. So these people who own black money, the money is useless for them. They can't use this. They can't spend this. Is that clear? See, there is one more big source, which is actually under tax evasion itself, which is real estate. You might have seen this personally as well, I'm sure. When you went to buy a site or a property, you would have seen that the actual government guidance value is something else. But what the owner is demanding and what you also agree to pay is something else. A property might be just 50 lakhs on paper. You're paying taxes only on that. But the actual transaction value might be 2 crores, which is many times higher than the reported value, which is also a type of tax evasion. So real estate industry generates massive black money. Now, if you agree to make cash payments to each other, then you can avoid detection for some time. Let's say buyer and the seller both agree that the seller says, I want some black money. Buyer also agrees to that. So they will settle part of the transaction in legal money, in white money, which is reported and accounted for and taxes are paid on it. Rest of the high value transaction, which is beyond the market value, that they will settle with black money. When such mutual agreement is there, black money can be useful. That's what politicians do, right? They use cash payments. They try to make cash settlements. That's what government officials do, criminals do. That's what many big entities do as well, even celebrities and private corporations. But how long will you continue paying in cash? You can't do this in every place, right? So there are checks and balances where these transactions will come up. The moment you start using the banking route, the moment you start, spending beyond your limit, it attracts the attention of various authorities and you will get caught eventually. So black money, large sums of black money is almost useless for the actual owners. So then what's the point of doing all this, right? What's the point of taking the risk if they can't enjoy the wealth? So this is where money laundering comes in. This is where the process of money laundering comes in. For these criminals, all of them are criminals, honestly. For them to enjoy this wealth, the dirt has to be removed. The money has to be cleaned, meaning it has to be laundered. The source has to be concealed. You have to conceal where the money came from, conceal who owns the wealth, create as much distance as possible from the actual owner and the actual money. So if you can do this somehow, then that process is called money laundering. Is that clear? Once the cleaning process is done, once the laundering is done, this becomes clean wealth, clean money. Once the dirt is removed, just like you remove dirt on your clothes, right? You get clean clothes after you wash it. Similarly, when dirty money is washed or laundered, you get clean money, which can be now enjoyed by these owners of black money. It becomes legitimate wealth, clean wealth. So let us see how this is done. We understood what happens, but let's see how it is actually done. What are the processes involved? Let's get a basic idea. There are 3 steps involved in any money laundering scandal. 3 basic steps. You have placement, layering, integration. All right. See here, you need not go into the details. It is a complex activity, right? If we try to go into it, we'll need a good 1 or 2 hours just for that. And trust me, it's not needed for the exam. UPSC will not ask you specific details of how money is laundered, but the basics are needed. The steps involved, what happens in every step? How does this whole scheme work? That knowledge, basic knowledge is necessary. These are your 3 basic steps. Please write it down. There can be a prelims question as well. UPSC can give you a few options asking you to identify the steps involved in money laundering. All right, you should know the order, in the same order. You can't interchange the order. First is placement, second is layering, third is integration. Now imagine there is one individual who owns a lot of black money. All right, I'll explain this with a hypothetical example. Let's say there is a celebrity or a celebrity who has concealed income, evaded taxes. Now this celebrity wants to convert the wealth, convert the black money into white. Or another instance, let's say there is a politician, a government minister. He has made a lot of black money through corruption, through bribes. Now he wants to make use of it more freely and openly. So he wants to get it converted. Now this owner, right, clearly has dirt on the black money. The source is directly tied and it's tied directly to that owner. If he or she tries to spend it beyond a limit, they'll get caught. So what do? They want to launder this money, so they'll approach the middlemen. Few people cannot do this, as I told you. Few organizations can't pull it off. It requires a global level of network to pull off a money laundering scandal. All right. So these elements who sit on massive wealth, right? You can't even imagine that kind of wealth, like hundreds of crores, thousands of crores, lakhs of crore rupees. That is the kind of wealth we're talking about. Millions of dollars, basically. So they will take the help of few middlemen. This could be terrorist groups, criminal organizations, Hawala networks, or even some banks and financial consulting firms. All right. For playing this role, they get a commission. They all get a cut in between. Please remember this. If the money has to be laundered, in between there are many, many elements that get involved. For example, the money has to be moved out of the country. Sometimes the cash will be smuggled. Is that clear? Not just the counterfeit notes, even the actual cash might be smuggled, which requires the help of organized criminal gangs. All right? Those who specialize in trafficking, especially human trafficking, they can use couriers. They can use few people as couriers and smuggle the cash out of the country. So there is a direct involvement of criminal elements. All right, smuggling cash out will require the help of criminal networks, criminal cartels. They will use poor people. All right, they'll lure them with money. They'll book tickets for them, right, asking them to carry cash abroad. They conceal it. They take very risky methods to conceal the money that they are carrying, and they try to smuggle it out. Or they will smuggle it across borders. If they are well versed with drug and arms trafficking, if they know where the border loopholes are present, they'll try to sneak it across the border. So criminal entities get involved who might be connected with terrorist organizations as well. And because of the service they are providing, they get a commission, they get a cut. Since we are talking about millions of dollars, they might get few $1,000s, several $1,000s as commission. Hawala networks might be employed, Hawala transactions. Have you heard of Hawala transactions? It's an informal banking system in Islam. It's related to Islamic religious banking. Hawala transactions per se are not the problem. The problem is they are being misused. Hawala transactions, they are informal transactions. There are no records kept. There is no evidence of this transaction happening. It entirely happens purely based on word of mouth, based on trust. There is no trail of evidence in a Hawala transaction. It's mouth to mouth transfer that happens. How does it work? See, in a bank, let's say you want to transfer money from India to US. What do? You go to a bank where foreign exchange is provided, or you go to wire transfer companies like Western Union and others. So you wire that money. When you're sending money abroad, if you've ever done it, these banks and the organizations like Western Union, they collect all your documents, right? You have to give your PAN card, give all your basic documents, including Aadhaar and your address, right? You have to provide all the basic details. Thorough KYC essentially is done. So if legal transactions are being done, these guys will get caught, right? They're leaving behind a trail of evidence where everything is being documented. So regular transactions may not help them. So they use Hawala transactions where there is no evidence, no records, no documentation. So how does it work then? It works only by mouth-to-mouth exchange. Meaning, let's say a person A wants to transfer money to person B from India to US. I'll just give you a crude example, a basic example. Let's say he wants to carry out a Hawala transaction, send some money from India to US. A wants to send money to B. Now he will approach a Hawala dealer, a Hawala agent in India. He will tell him that this is the amount to be paid to this particular recipient. All right. He will pay that money as well. Let's say 1 crore rupees. In Indian rupees, he'll pay the Hawala agent. He'll tell him that this money should reach my contact, who's person B in the US. He'll give him his details. The money is also given. Now, this money will never leave India. It will never cross India's borders. It will remain as it is. The Hawala agent in India will contact his counterpart. It's a global network. There will be these Hawala agents around the world. It's a trust-based network. It's again a criminal network. It's a criminal activity. He will contact his counterpart in the US. He will give him all the details. See, this is the money you should pay to this guy. He's the recipient. And to ensure the safety, security of this entire transaction, there will be one password, which is known only to these entities. The Hawala agent in India, when collecting the money and the details, would have given the password to A, who's sending the money. He will communicate this to B. Where to collect it from? What's the password? So he will go meet this Hawala agent in the US, give him the correct password, and immediately he'll pay him in US dollars. The equivalent of that is paid with a commission taken by the Hawala agents. So transaction is done. The purpose was to ensure that B gets that money. He got it. Doesn't matter who's paying him. Hawala agent in US is paying him, right? Because his counterpart in India told him to do that. And both will get a cut. They take a commission here. And as A wanted, he's transferred money to B. No evidence, no records. It's all mouth to mouth, word to word transaction, entirely based on trust. There is no trail, no documentation at all. Even if you try to investigate, you will hit a dead end. So this route is blatantly misused by criminals, terrorists, and money laundering networks. This is how money is moved around, through informal channels. All right. This can be moved. This money can be moved even through banks, even through stock markets, through the banking financial system as well. The money can be moved, but it requires fraud to be committed. It requires the collusion of officials and institutions. There are few private companies. There have been many banks. There have been private consulting firms, financial firms, right? They all provide this as a service, again, for commission. Many reputed organizations also have done it. Sometimes the organization wouldn't do it, but the corrupt officials might do it. All that it requires is wrong entries. You just have to rig, manipulate the accounts, manipulate the data, the details, make it look like legitimate. With the right money given, with the right bribe paid to everyone involved, this massive scandal can also be pulled off. From a local bank manager to central bank authorities and other government officials, private entities, if they all collude and work together to commit this fraud, they can easily pull it off. It just requires some skill, some talent, right? Just to know how to make these transactions happen, how to fudge the records. So this is a route through which money is taken out and it is placed into the financial system. It is introduced into the financial system. Usually it's abroad, not here in India. The money is first taken out through all these routes and then placed into the global financial system. So now experts will come in. You need professionals to do the next step. This is where accountants, like CAs, for example, top private consulting firms and consultants who specialize in financial transactions, they come into picture. What they do is, once the money is placed, right, it's placed into the financial system, into banks, into financial markets. From here, they start the next step called layering, where they conduct a series of complex transactions. Is that clear? These professionals, experts, expert accountants, private consulting firms, accounting firms, they all provide this as a service, again, for commission. Everyone involved in between keeps getting a commission. They will conduct a series of transactions from one entity to another, one person to another. In many cases, they're all fake identities. Those organizations don't even exist. They're all fake firms. Those individuals don't even exist. So a series of complex transactions are conducted across the world, across multiple jurisdictions. To avoid suspicion and detection, right, they move the money around through multiple jurisdictions and several complex transactions are conducted. That's why this step is called layering. They layer one transaction upon the other. Hundreds of transactions will be done, and usually this is not done for the whole money. The money is split. In fact, in the very starting step, when placement is being done and when money is being taken out, here itself the large amount is broken into smaller sums. If you try to do this with a large amount, you will get caught again. It's broken into smaller sums. This is called smurfing or fragmenting. Basically, you take 10 crore rupees, break it into 50,000 bunches. If you conduct 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 transactions, nobody will doubt you, right? The red flags will not go up. If you go conduct one 10 crore transaction, you'll get caught immediately. So they carry out smurfing or fragmenting. They break up the money, conduct small transactions over a period of time. They don't do it in one single day or in one single go. They do it over a period of time. They do it through different routes. All right, multiple routes are engaged. Some money might be sent through Hawala routes, some through the banking system itself by committing frauds. So like this, they'll push the money out, place it, and then conduct complex transactions where layering takes place. One layer after the other, one transaction after the other is done around the world to basically remove the dirt. This is where the dirt gets removed. The source and the owner get concealed when hundreds of complex transactions are done. These are not simple transactions like one person transferring money to another. It's not simple like that. It involves many complex financial instruments. You need financial experts to even understand, break it down, right? So this is done through a series of networks, and after hundreds of complex transactions across jurisdictions, the dirt is removed. The source is distanced. The owner is distanced. Even if someone tries to investigate from here, if you try to go back and look at the trail, the path, you'll get lost. You'll hit multiple dead ends. You'll not find enough evidence to link which country it came from, who owns this money, or what source did it come from. It becomes almost impossible to trace the origin of this money. So once the origin is concealed, the dirt is removed. As simple as that. Right? It's all about the source. What generated the wealth? Who owns the wealth? You conduct these complex transactions, automatically the dirt is removed, the source and the owner is removed. Now the money becomes as good as clean. Legal wealth, white money. All right? Now, they will bring this clean money, which is now laundered, it's free from dirt. They'll bring it into tax havens, low tax jurisdictions, to avoid paying unnecessary taxes. Here, the rules are very relaxed as well in tax havens like Mauritius. You might have heard about Liechtenstein, Cook Islands, Cayman Islands, Panama. Right? There are many such tax havens which are low tax or zero tax jurisdictions. They have very relaxed regulations and they have tax secrecy. They provide secrecy to the investors. They don't reveal the information, don't share it. Even in placement, jurisdictions like Switzerland, the Swiss banks, banks in places like Panama, they all offer secrecy to their depositors. It helps them to move the money out and carry out placement and layering. So there are such banking financial systems and jurisdictions where you are granted complete secrecy. They don't reveal any details of the transaction. This gives you an added layer of protection for the money launderers. Now, the clean money which is brought to a tax haven is brought into a shell company or a shell corporation. These are again fake companies. These are just fronts. It's a front organization. They would have simply registered here just to get the benefit of zero tax jurisdiction. Right? They'll just have an office registered here with all papers and documents. They'll have few employees as well. But these shell companies will not have any legitimate business of their own. If you actually look into their business, right, they might be transacting millions of dollars, but genuinely they'll not have any business of their own. Just to prove to the world, they would be running some parallel businesses on the front. But in reality, these are fake entities. These are fake firms set up just for money laundering. They are set up in tax havens because of the secrecy, the protection they get, and also the low tax jurisdiction or zero tax benefits they get. So from the shell company, which is just a front organization, now this money will be brought back to India. Money is integrated back into the Indian financial system. It is brought back as investments like FDI or FII into the capital market, or to buy luxury items which could be later used and enjoyed and owned by the actual owner. Right? This is how the money is brought back as legitimate investment into the country, as FDI and FII. All right? So let's say a defense minister is a corrupt defense minister he struck a deal with a defense exporting company, right? Let's say India is procuring weapons, and a foreign vendor who wants to win this contract, they would have bribed the defense minister, right? So they can't pay this bribe directly. To get a favorable deal, to get hold of this military contract where they can make a lot of profits, they would have struck a deal with the defense minister, right? And they can't pay the bribe directly to the defense minister. They'll get caught. Both of them will get caught. They can't use that money as well. So what they do is, the foreign defense manufacturer, they will place the money. They will break up the bribe amount into different sums. They'll hire a money laundering agent to do this. So they will place the money, conduct layering around the world. They'll layer the transactions to remove the dirt, which is connection with the company, right? The money is put through such complex transactions after placement and layering that the money gets distanced from the defense company, right? That is the source. The source is the bribe activity, the corrupt activity. The origin, the owner is the defense company which is paying the bribe. So now, through placement and layering with the help of money laundering agents, the money is moved as far away as possible from the defense manufacturer. So even if you investigate, you can't trace the money back to this company. So now the dirt is removed, it's clean money, it's brought to a tax haven, into a shell company right now. And defense minister will tell them, see, I have a relative, I have a friend, he has this company. Invest that money as FDI into his company, or buy the stocks of his company. Understood? That is how the money comes back. That is how the bribe gets paid, through such complex routes. So this money, which is now laundered, removed as far away as possible from the defense manufacturer, comes into a shell corporation, gets invested officially, legally into a company in India, right? It comes as FDI and FII, and later you will see that it is connected to the defense minister, right? He will enjoy these assets through indirect methods to other Benami accounts and Benami assets which are owned by his friends, family, relatives. That is where the investments are brought back. And this process essentially constitutes your money laundering. So as the money has completed a round, one entire round, this whole process is also called round tripping. The entire process is also referred to as round tripping. Kindly remember this. It's completed one entire cycle. That's why it's called round tripping. So the real threat here is to the economy. It creates economic imbalance, right? If the country's wealth is being taken out and brought back through such methods, it destabilizes the economy itself. So it's a major economic threat. And along with that, it's a national security threat, because through the entire process, there were criminals and terrorists involved somewhere in between who were taking out some commission. Organized criminal organizations and cartels, Hawala networks, right? They are involved here, and the money could get channeled into terror financing. So let's say even foreign intelligence agencies like Pakistan's ISI can also employ this route to fund terror organizations. So by relaxing money laundering, anti-money laundering measures, by not properly enforcing the money laundering standards, Pakistan can allow these activities to happen, which will enable the criminals and the terrorists to easily move money around and thus finance terrorism, which becomes a security threat. That is the reason why you need to tackle this with utmost seriousness. So we have a global framework for this. There is a global organization as well. I'm sure all of you would have heard about it. It's called FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. This is a global body established by the G7 countries in 1989 to tackle the menace of money laundering. That is the primary purpose of FATF, to combat money laundering. All right. It's headquartered at OECD in Paris. That's where the FATF secretariat is located. Clear? And when it was established in 1989 by the G7 industrialized countries, its goal was to combat money laundering with anti-money laundering measures through AML measures. All right. In 2001, when the 9/11 attacks happened, which was carried out by Al Qaeda, it exposed the direct links between money laundering and terrorist financing. Because the money used for 9/11 attacks was moved through Hawala transactions and through money laundering channels. So, following the 9/11 attacks, FATF was given a second objective. It was given a second objective, which is to combat terrorist financing. So, this was added later. Kindly remember this point as well. So, the anti-terror financing measures, they were added later in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks. So in 1989, when the organization was set up by the G7, it only had one objective, which was to combat money laundering through anti-money laundering measures. But after the 9/11 attacks, which clearly established the links between money laundering and terror financing, second objective was added, which was to counter terrorist financing, to implement anti-terrorist financing measures. These are the two goals of FATF. So as part of this mandate, FATF monitors whether the member countries are following the global standards laid out by FATF. It brings out a set of standards for anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. These measures have to be implemented by countries and jurisdictions around the world. So FATF will monitor, it will review whether countries are following the standards. It will review the progress they are making, whether they are enforcing these measures, and it will report on their progress. It will promote the adoption of these measures around the world by closely working with governments and key financial and global institutions. This is the primary role of FATF. So it's essentially a policy-making body. All right? So with the added goal of combating terror financing, it has become a very powerful and important organization since 2001. That's after the 9/11 attacks. So it's a policy-making body that recommends global standards which have to be adopted by member countries and jurisdictions around the world. Even if you're not a member of FATF, still it becomes an obligation. Understood? Even those who are not members of FATF, even they are obligated here. Every jurisdiction in the world is obligated to follow these global standards against money laundering. AML is anti-money laundering measures. CTF is counter-terror financing measures. They have to be adopted into your national laws and regulations. Every country will have their own laws and regulations, right? So you have to adopt these global standards into your national legal and regulatory framework. So there are 39 countries and 2 regional organizations, which is European Union and Gulf Cooperation Council, which are the members of FATF. All right. 39 member states are party to it, along with 2 regional groupings. So all the member states have the obligation, and even other jurisdictions, every jurisdiction, even if they're not a FATF member, even they are obligated. So FATF has these regional FATF styled bodies. To ensure it is implemented around the world, there are regional FATF styled bodies. There are around 9 such bodies, if I'm not wrong. So they enforce these standards. Apart from your main FATF, which is in Paris, right? That is the global organization. It works with regional bodies, regional FATF styled bodies. Like for Asia Pacific, there is one FATF styled body. For Africa, there will be one. For Latin America, there will be one. So there are around 9 FATF style regional bodies which enforce the standards on all the countries and jurisdictions. Is that clear? So let us see what obligations exist on FATF members. What are they expected to do? What are the other jurisdictions expected to implement? First of all, they should adopt all relevant international conventions. Convention against organized crime, combating narcotics, psychotropic drug substances, all such related conventions tied with organized crime, corruption, right, terrorism, any such convention, if it's there, they have to adopt those relevant conventions. They have to declare money laundering as a criminal offense through their national law. The law they will bring out against money laundering should declare that money laundering is a criminal offense. It should not be treated as any other civilian offense. It's a criminal offense. It should have a provision for confiscating the proceeds of the crime, where the concerned authority, which is investigating the case, they should be given the power to confiscate and attach the proceeds of the crime. Now let's say through money laundering, an individual has procured luxury assets. Let's say he has bought houses, he has bought a lot of property, he's invested in gold and other financial assets. Any such asset which has come through money laundering methods becomes proceeds of crime. All these financial assets, not just money, even any financial asset procured through money laundering routes, which is connected with money laundering, this can be confiscated by the authority. The concerned authority which is investigating, they can confiscate the proceeds of crime and attach this to the ongoing case, meaning the accused cannot have access to those financial assets until the case gets completed, until prosecution is done, right? The accused will not have access to those financial assets and funds. It will be frozen. It will be attached to the case. It will come under the court's direct jurisdiction. And if the accused is held guilty, right, as part of the punishment, along with the jail term, the financial assets are taken over by the state and they are liquidated. They're sold off, auctioned to generate the money to pay off all the banks and others who have suffered losses because of the money laundering scandal. Is that clear? The assets will be released back only if the accused is innocent, if their guilt is not proven in the court. So this is a mandatory provision. There should be a separate law where money laundering is declared as a crime and the proceeds of the crime should be confiscated and attached by the authorities in the ongoing case. Next, due diligence has to be shown in the banking financial system with regard to maintaining records and accounts, tracking suspicious transactions, verifying the identity of all customers through KYC process. This has to be standardized as per global standards laid down by FATF. That is why every bank, every stockbroker, every financial institution, right, they all conduct thorough KYC. Even your digital payment apps, right, they all ask for your PAN card. They ask for your address proof, right, your identity proof. They will take your images, sometimes your biometrics as well, by linking it with Aadhaar, right? This allows identity verification to ensure that Benami transactions are not happening, fraudulent transactions are not happening. Records and accounts in the banking financial system have to be maintained as per a global standard. Any suspicious activity has to be tracked, flagged immediately, and further investigated, which is also a mandatory provision. Right? This is an obligation on all banks and financial institutions, which should be enforced by the regulators. In case of India, regulators like RBI, SEBI, they have the obligation to enforce this on banks and financial institutions. Understood? So for tracking suspicious transactions, an intelligence organization has to be established called Financial Intelligence Unit. This is mandatory under FATF. Every country should have a financial intelligence unit which collects financial intelligence on suspicious transactions. It will keep track of suspicious activity. It will work with banks and financial institutions on the back end to flag any suspicious transaction which is happening, and they'll conduct further investigations. They should cooperate internationally with other countries in investigation and prosecution. All right. And they should also establish a dedicated law enforcement agency to enforce the law, such as the ED, Directorate of Enforcement, or Enforcement Directorate, as you know it. So there should be one intelligence agency called Financial Intelligence Unit for intelligence gathering, a law enforcement agency for enforcing your money laundering law, anti-money laundering law, to enforce the provisions, to arrest the criminals, to file cases against them, confiscate the proceeds, to investigate and collect evidence and prosecute the case. There should be a law enforcement authority called the Directorate of Enforcement. These are basic obligations on FATF members and all jurisdictions. Got it? Now, what will happen if a country does not comply? Let's say a certain country or jurisdiction, they don't follow these standards. What if they deliberately violate the standards laid down by FATF? What if they don't follow the anti-money laundering and counter-terror financing measures? Maybe a country may not even pass a law. They will not declare money laundering as a crime. They will not include the actual standards prescribed. Right? They will not maintain the right records. They will not track suspicious activity and report them. So all these are violations of FATF standards. So in case of violations, there is a penalty which comes from FATF. In case of non-compliance, there will be global action led by FATF. FATF, as I told you, has the powers to review the progress of countries, and if there are violations, it can warn those countries by placing them on the gray list. If a country is deliberately not following the standards despite repeated warnings, it can give them a final notice by putting them on the gray list, which is known as other monitored jurisdictions. They will come under enhanced monitoring of FATF. This is the last notice. After repeated warnings, if the country is not showing any interest in making improvements, if it is seen as deliberately doing this, right, a final notice is given to those countries by putting them on the gray list of FATF. All right, gray list is an informal term used by the media. Officially, it's called other monitored jurisdictions. Even after getting gray listed, once they are gray listed, they are given an action plan to follow. They are given set of targets to achieve within a given deadline. All right, this is what FATF does with its regional bodies. They meet regularly. They conduct periodic reviews of all the countries and jurisdictions. If someone is deliberately not implementing the standards, they're warned again and again. And as a final warning, as a final notice, they're put on the gray list. Gray listed countries are given an action plan. FATF tells them what to do, what measures that they want. The specific targets are prescribed with a given deadline. Despite this, if they show no progress, if they don't make any changes, if they don't cooperate deliberately, then FATF can take the final step by blacklisting those countries, which calls for action against them, global action against them, as they are declared as non-cooperative jurisdictions. Meaning they're not helping, they're not cooperating with the global framework. They're deliberately violating the standards, which means there should be an action taken against them. So those countries are blacklisted. And this is very, very serious. Getting grey listed itself will have an impact. But getting blacklisted is going to cripple that country's economy. Is that clear? So let's see what happens when FATF takes this action. If you're grey listed by FATF, that itself becomes a black mark. Investors will stop investing in your country. Those who are giving loans, they'll stop giving you loans. Right? They'll become hesitant. If you're not following these standards, it means you're allowing money laundering to happen, terror financing to continue. So just getting grey listed is enough to have an economic impact. But once you're blacklisted, this brings full-fledged economic sanctions. Global economic sanctions are imposed and the country will be cut off and isolated from the global economy. No global institution will give loans to them. IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and all other development institutions, none of them will provide loans or funds to them. It will bring full-fledged sanctions on them. International trade will take a hit. Your exports and imports will be directly affected, as no trader or merchant will come forward to trade with those countries because they will attract penalties if they try to do that. Understood? Settling the transaction becomes difficult and almost impossible when global sanctions are imposed. If all countries work together through FATF and global bodies, it will become a crippling sanction which affects the international trade of the country. Your trade will collapse, causing severe domestic economic damage. You can't procure raw materials. You can't export, meaning your domestic industries, your agriculture, everything takes a hit. It leads to an international economic boycott against such countries, and their credit rating will be completely downgraded. The sovereign credit rating is downgraded to junk status, which means no investor will even look at your country. Capital flow will stop. Flow of FDI, FII will come to a halt, causing complete economic collapse of that country. Is that clear? So getting blacklisted has some serious consequences. And our dear neighbor Pakistan came very, very close to getting blacklisted. It has been grey listed multiple times because of the efforts of India, US, France, and other like-minded countries. They have targeted countries like Pakistan, which have allowed money laundering to continue as they enable terror financing. Pakistan is a lead sponsor of terrorism, as we have studied. So Pakistan was not following the standards. It was deliberately avoiding or violating FATF standards, and it was allowing money laundering to continue, terror financing to continue. So from 2009 till 2023, Pakistan has been grey listed multiple times. Once after the Mumbai attacks, efforts, it showed some changes, some progress, so it was removed from the grey list. Again, it was grey listed in 2018. It remained on the grey list until recently, and it has been recently removed because of the progress it has shown. It's been recently removed from the grey list. It has spent many years on the grey list, and it has had an economic impact on Pakistan's economy. So India has used FATF platform for coercive diplomacy against Pakistan to bring sanctions against Pakistan. Right? We've targeted the country for financing terrorism, for allowing money laundering and terror financing to continue. By repeated grey listing of Pakistan, there has been an economic impact. It has avoided the blacklisting at the last minute because due to this international pressure, it finally showed some changes, made some progress in implementing the action plan that was given by FATF. It has strengthened its anti-money laundering, counter-terror financing measures. So that is why finally FATF has removed it from the grey list. See, Pakistan, the problem is it has not followed even the basic UN norms and conventions and resolutions. Remember, we studied 1267 Sanctions Committee, where sanctions will apply on globally designated terrorists. Pakistan has not implemented those sanctions as well. If Hafiz Saeed, Masood Azhar are designated by 1267 Sanctions Committee, Pakistan has to freeze all their financial assets and impose sanctions on them. It has to restrict their movement, arrest them if they detect their presence. It has to prevent them from getting arms and weapons. These are the three sanctions that will apply. Pakistan has not implemented any of them. Terror leaders like Hafiz Saeed, Zakiur Rahman Lakwi, then Masood Azhar and others, they roam freely in Pakistan. They conduct rallies against India, raise funds and recruitment against India. They deliver hate speech against India. And still Pakistan says we don't know where the terrorists are hiding. Right? So this is a blatant violation which has been exposed, and it has violated UN Resolution 2462, which calls all countries to criminalize terrorist financing. It has not acted against terrorists belonging to Lashkar, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Jamaat-ud-Dawa, which are all globally designated organizations. It has not denied them weapon access. It has not placed a travel ban on them. It has not frozen their funds. Right? Even if they were arrested briefly, it pressed only basic charges. Never terrorism charges were never pressed against them. Like Hafiz Saeed was arrested. Masood Azhar was also arrested. Zakiur Rahman Lakwi was arrested. But in none of the cases, terror charges were brought against them. Terror laws were not brought against them. Some ordinary provisions dealing with public order disruption, riots, such unnecessary provisions were brought on them where they will not even face any strict punishment. These are blatant violations of international norms and conventions. That is why India got support to grey list Pakistan repeatedly. It has been on the grey list 3 times. It has spent many years. And finally, it came under tremendous pressure, or else it would have been blacklisted. Right? And you all know how Pakistan's economy is today. It's already on the brink of collapse. If it had been blacklisted, that would have been the death of Pakistan, the collapse of the Pakistani state. It's under that pressure that Pakistan made changes in the last 2-3 years. It impressed FATF, showed some progress. That is why it was removed from the grey list. Is that clear? Now, what has India done? How is India following FATF standards? This could also come as a question. We have a dedicated law in place. Unlike Pakistan, we are very committed to these international obligations. We brought out the PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, 2002. India is a FATF member. Don't forget this. We are one of the members of FATF. So as a responsible member, we have adopted a dedicated law, the PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. This is what creates the legal framework against money laundering in India. Through this law, we have established Financial Intelligence Unit, India, as mandated by FATF. So FIU keeps check on all suspicious transactions in the banking financial system, generates the financial intelligence. We have set up the ED, the Enforcement Directorate or Directorate of Enforcement. So we basically have a law enforcement agency. ED was there from before as well, right? It's actually an old organization dealing with foreign exchange violations. But under the law, ED has been designated as the concerned nodal law enforcement agency to investigate money laundering cases. So ED has the primary jurisdiction. It's the nodal law enforcement agency. It has primary jurisdiction in money laundering cases. We have given that legal recognition through the law as per FATF recommendations. FIU acts as the intelligence agency, generating financial intelligence. All the standards have been imposed by India. All the record keeping, accounting standards, right? They have been enforced on banks, financial companies, non-banking financial companies, the stock markets, the stock brokers, everyone involved in the transactions, right? All institutions, intermediaries, they are all under obligation to implement the banking, accounting, record keeping standards. That is why KYC process in India is so strict. You can't open a bank account without KYC. You can't invest in stock markets. You can't move money around, right? You can't do anything in the banking or financial system without a proper KYC process. This helps in identifying the source, the origin, right? So very strict standards are implemented in India, and FIU keeps a check on all these records and accounts. On the back end of the system, without your knowledge, a thorough check keeps happening. Any suspicious transactions have to be flagged by the banks itself, right? They have to inform FIU and take a look at these suspicious transactions which could be happening in the banking financial system. The law defines money laundering according to FATF standards, declares it as a criminal offense. The proceeds of the crime can be frozen by the ED. It can be seized and attached to the ongoing case. So as recommended by FATF, we have implemented all the provisions, right? ED can declare this as a criminal offense. It can register a FIR, a criminal case can be registered, treating it as a criminal offense. And the assets, the proceeds of the crime, can be frozen, seized and confiscated and attached to the ongoing case. So all the required measures have been implemented by India, and even the terror financing measures, the counter-terror financing measures, even they have been incorporated into our anti-terror law, the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. By amending the law, we have made UAPA the primary law against terror financing and terrorism, right? We studied this under the terrorism chapter. It not only deals with terrorism, right? It's not only the primary anti-terror law of the country, it also contains provisions against terror financing. The FATF standards related to counter-terror financing has been incorporated under UAPA. So this is how India has followed the obligation. Under Section 3, money laundering has been criminalized. Proceeds of crime are clearly defined, which allows the confiscation of the proceeds of crime. FIU works with the banks and financial institutions to maintain records and check for fraudulent activities, and ED acts as the law enforcement agency. Is that clear? The law is so strict that the burden of proof is on the accused. Accused has to prove that he is innocent. This is usually the opposite of natural principles of justice, right? In any democratic setup, the accused is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty, meaning the prosecution, the state, the investigating agency has to prove that the accused is guilty by collecting evidence against the accused. But here it's the opposite. Once accused, that person is presumed to be guilty. The legal system presumes the person to be guilty. The burden of proof lies now on the accused to show that they are innocent and they are not involved in money laundering. This is a very stringent provision. This is where a controversy arises, that the law is too strict and potentially ED might misuse this to target political opponents. There is a very strong criticism here against PMLA and how ED keeps conducting raids. Right? In the last few years, in the last 15-20 years, ED has conducted multiple raids in the country. Right? So there is a criticism that PMLA is going beyond FATF standards and providing such strict provisions. In democracy, the burden of proof is on the state. The investigation, the prosecution has to prove that the accused is guilty, not the accused. Here it's the opposite. Burden of proof is on the accused to prove their innocence. So this is seen as a violation of the basic rights, fundamental human rights, and it could lead to misuse by the ruling parties at the center. That is why role of ED is often criticized, just like CBI is criticized for being politically misused to target political opponents and critics. There is an appellate tribunal as well to settle disputes, right? So all these are key provisions given under the Act. Recently, we have amended PMLA to make it even more stringent and to further expand the jurisdiction and powers of ED. So I have added those points as well. Please take a look. Today, money laundering has been made a standalone crime. Previously, it was not an independent crime. Is that clear? So what would happen is that, now let's say there is a case of drug smuggling. All right. Let's say this drug smuggling is connected with some terror financing. There is some money laundering connection. Now, when this case comes up, what would happen is that ED could not claim jurisdiction, sole jurisdiction, because terror case would be handled by NIA, drug case would be handled by Narcotics Control Bureau, because the laws provide full jurisdiction to them. Primary jurisdiction is given to them. So ED has to ask permission from the others to take up the money laundering case for investigation. Now, this was hampering investigation. In the real world, cases are interconnected, right? An arms smuggling case might be connected with money laundering and terror financing. But NIA and Narcotics Control Bureau, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, they would claim primary jurisdiction, file cases and start their investigation. ED would be left behind. If ED had to investigate the money laundering angle, it had to get their approvals, their permissions first, which would lead to time delay and hamper the investigation. So now, through the amendment, money laundering is a standalone independent crime. Is that clear? A scheduled predicate offense, meaning ED can exercise its own jurisdiction. Even if NIA and others are investigating, if NCB, NIA, CBI, others are also investigating the case, ED can register its own case and parallelly investigate the money laundering aspect of it. The ambit of proceeds of crime has been expanded because recently many fugitives, right, many offenders, they ran away from the country and became fugitive economic offenders. You might have heard about Vijay Mallya, Lalit Modi, Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksky, and many others, all top corporate leaders. They committed massive frauds with money laundering scandals as well, and eventually ran away from the country. They duped the banks, right? They failed to pay back the loans. They destroyed taxpayers' wealth and ran away from India. They're hiding in foreign countries. So to deal with such criminals, right, their assets, the proceeds of crime was expanded. The definition was given a wider expansion. See what happens. Let's take Vijay Mallya, for example. He will have some assets in India. He will have a brewery in India. He will have a cricket team, right? He'll have other investments in India. Not all of them will be from money laundering. Not all of them will be proceeds of crime. Some of them will be proceeds of crime. So only those assets would have been confiscated by ED. But Vijay Mallya might have other assets abroad which are procured through proceeds of crime. He might have bought a yacht. He might have bought a luxury hotel or a luxury castle or an estate. Now, how do we get hold of that? How do we confiscate that foreign property and asset and attach to the case? It's not possible. Foreign countries will not allow that. We don't have jurisdiction in other countries. So to account for this, the definition of proceeds of crime has been changed. Now, let's say Vijay Mallya has $500 million worth foreign assets. The equivalent of that can be confiscated in India from his legal wealth as well. Let's say he has some legal assets in India which are not procured through money laundering routes, which has nothing to do with money laundering. Even those legal assets can be confiscated and attached by the ED to compensate for the foreign assets present abroad. This is a very, very big change. It allows the fugitives who have run away from India, the fugitive economic offenders, right, to pay the price for the crime they have committed. Right? We may not get hold of them. We may not be able to get them arrested and extradite them because of all the legal challenges involved. But at least the financial part of it, the proceeds of crime which they have abroad, the equivalent of that can be confiscated here from their legal assets. All of that can be attached to the case, and once the courts declare them guilty, you can liquidate them, you can auction the assets, sell them off, and use the money to pay the banks and others who have suffered financial losses because of the crimes they have committed. So this helps in strengthening the banking system, in tackling non-performing assets, the NPAs, which had shot up due to such crimes being committed. Along with that, many other strict powers have been given. The power to search, seize, all these powers have been increased. They can be done without a warrant. This is where criticism comes again. Why should ED have such strict powers? Because there is a risk of it getting misused. ED now has powers to search, seize without a warrant, without even prerequisite FIR, right? ED has been given tremendous powers to search, arrest, and seize. So the fear is that ED might exploit this because these offenses are non-bailable, right? You'll never get bail. It's impossible to get bail once the strict charges are filed, as you're presumed to be guilty, right? So since ED has these tremendous powers, there is a fear that political parties might misuse this power, the ruling party at the center, because ED directly comes under the finance ministry, under the central government. So there is a concern that ruling party might misuse ED to target the opposition, to target political parties, critics, opponents by conducting ED raids. Once you are arrested and confiscated, your property is confiscated, it becomes very, very challenging to prove your innocence or to even get bail. So that is why there is a criticism, but government feels that these measures are needed. So it's a controversial topic. All right. So this is the basic awareness you should have about PMLA, FATF, and money laundering. So this completes my discussion. Let's see if there are any questions or doubts remaining. In the meantime, take a look at PYQs that have come from money laundering chapter. Shivani is asking how Hawala transaction is valid, why government has not banned it. It is banned, it is illegal, right? But it is carried out illegally, obviously, as it is a trust-based informal transaction. The Hawala networks and agents, they keep carrying it out. It's illegal. It's banned already. Vivek is asking, are the laws stringent enough? Definitely. The laws are very strict. I told you it's a little too strict. It's more than what FATF is providing for. So that's why there is a fear that the ED might misuse the powers and ruling parties might misuse this to target political opposition. Rashmi is asking, is gold and silver involved in money laundering? Yes. When money is brought back, right, it can be used to purchase gold and other luxury assets. Vaishna is asking, what is automatic exchange of information agreement to curb money laundering? See, one way to tackle money laundering is to trace the money, to trace the transactions, right? So as money is moving around in different countries and jurisdictions, everywhere there will be taxes paid, right? There will be records kept. So when you sign these automatic tax information exchange agreements, countries will be obligated to share the tax information. The central banks, the banking system, and the authorities, they'll be obligated to automatically share the tax related information regarding the movement of money which is taking place. So that is why we sign these automatic tax information exchange agreements. Student is asking, how can we write a constructive criticism of the amendments? See, first you discuss the provisions, explain how we are following FATF standards, and then you can mention that some of the provisions can be seen as too stringent, like the power to seize, search, and arrest without warrant. then the expanded powers which have been given, right, where the jurisdiction has been expanded of ED, there you can specifically pinpoint that lot of ED raids are happening, but conviction rate is low, which means many cases are false to begin with, or ED doesn't have enough evidence against the accused, right? So point out that concerns have come up where experts, activists have warned that ED is likely being misused to target political opposition. There is a concern which has come up, and this needs to be addressed, right? So that's enough. I know many of you are asking, how do we tackle money laundering, right? See, it's not easy. These investigations, trust me, they're very complex as it's a global level scandal. It involves some of the most elite institutions, several reputed individuals as well, as it involves a global level corrupt nexus. It becomes almost very impossible and challenging to crack these cases. And the very nature of the crime is such that it's very complex. The transactions are so complicated, even professionals won't be able to crack them, right? So that is why money laundering persists, it prevails very easily and affects many countries. Why India can't arrest criminals outside the country? Because you don't have jurisdiction. You think foreign countries will allow our forces to go there and arrest them and come back? No one will allow that, right? Indian police, Indian law enforcement, we have no jurisdiction abroad. We can't step on other soil and arrest them and bring them here. That can't be done. Vivek is asking, please, Budapest Convention in brief, sir. Budapest Convention is a convention on cyber crimes brought out by Council of Europe. It provides for international cooperation between members to tackle cyber crimes, to investigate, to share evidence, and prosecute cyber crimes. All right. Now, if you're part of Budapest Convention, you have an obligation. You have to implement all those principles in your laws. You have to mandatorily cooperate, right? Interconnect your networks as well, share data and information. So that is where IB has opposed India joining Budapest Convention. MHA wants to join to tackle cyber crimes, but the Intelligence Bureau, which fears that Western intelligence agencies might step up their spying on India, has opposed it on security grounds, and that's why India has not joined the Budapest Convention. All right. So guys, these are the questions. Take a look at the PYQs as well. It's very straightforward. It's all connected to money laundering. So let's end the session here. Tomorrow, we'll take up the last few topics. And till then, take care. Have a good night. Do let me know how the class went. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you have understood everything, right? And use the PYQs for answer writing practice. Please do this for me. Take it seriously. Use all the PYQs, even the latest questions from 2022 or 2023. Try to write answers for all of them. That's the best way to practice. Once we complete the syllabus, start your answer writing practice. All right. So that's it. Let's end the class for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Good night.